Phoenix Nights. Chapter 518. The Goldman was the latest research result of a pseudo-natural silly female scientist. It was powerful, could have magic damage, and ignored debuff magic. The only drawback was that it moved slowly. The Goldman was not a living being, but a puppet-like existence, so Chunrui could put it in the storage warehouse and carry it with him. These 10 gold men were newly made by Rala. Their strength had reached the Demon King level. With their speed, they definitely couldn't do anything to the lamp spirits. But if they just defended in a fixed position, the characteristic of ignoring debuff magic immediately became the biggest obstacle to the lamp spirits. It had to be said that the appearance of Chunrui and the gold men had reversed the entire battle. After the 2 Demon Emperor-level lamp spirits were entangled by Chunrui and La Liza, the Medusas had surrounded the rest of the lamp spirits. Despite having the upper hand, Chunrui was still aggrieved by the endless debuff magic. He called Lan Liza and entangled the 2 Demon Emperor-level lamp spirits alone. Lan Liza's affection for this new friend increased a little. She freed her hands to deal with the weaker lamp spirits. The lamp spirits had the special attribute of immortality, but they were not unafraid of all injuries. When they were attacked beyond their defense, the light patterns on the lamp spirits' bodies would also become dim. When their power was exhausted, their entire body would disappear. The 2 Demon Emperor-level lamp spirits saw each other's intentions. As they were about to get rid of Chunrui to protect their kind, they suddenly felt that the surrounding scene had changed rapidly. Everything around them began to decay and decay. Their bodies also involuntarily felt weak and tired. This was the power of the Autumn Territory, and it was also the territory power that Chunrui comprehended on his own without the super system. Compared with the difficulty of comprehending at the beginning, it was easy to use now. The 2 Demon Emperor-level lamp spirits were taken aback. The patterns on their bodies began to flash. Their magic bodies were very special. As long as they provided the corresponding magic power, they could eliminate the negative effects on their bodies. However, this special physique had no effect in the face of Chunrui's territory power. What shocked them even more was that the snake blood trees were withering along with their fruits. The appearance of the stars faintly appeared in the Autumn Territory. Under the power of the dual territory combined with the Galaxy Territory skill, the lamp spirits felt that their power was suppressed to the lowest point, and they showed signs of defeat. Strangely, the Demon Emperor-level lamp spirits didn't seem to be able to use territory power. Just when Chunrui wanted to capture the enemy to ask about the situation in the mine, a lamp spirit suddenly said a strange language that was not the common language of the demon realm. "Genie! The situation is critical now. The energy fruit might wither under the power of this enemy. I'm preparing to self-destruct and perish together with this enemy. You have to escape with everyone. Understood?" Another lamp spirit named Genie responded, and her figure immediately floated away. The golden patterns on the talking lamp spirit began to emit a dazzling light. Demon Emperor-level self-destruction? Take him down with me? Chunrui shuddered and quickly shouted through the analytical eyes. "Wait a minute!" The 2 lamp spirits were startled. Even the light patterns on the lamp spirit that was about to self-destruct stopped shining. He asked, "Can you understand our language?" "Yes." Chunrui stopped the attack, but he did not converge the territory power. "Is the energy fruit you mentioned the snake blood fruit guarded by the Medusa tribe?" "Yes, that is the only energy substance found so far that can maintain our existence." A strong killing intent appeared in the eyes of the lamp spirits who planned to self-destruct. Their power began to skyrocket again. "I don't know if you really destroyed them, but with you here, we can no longer get the energy fruit. It is even very difficult to escape. Once the energy is exhausted, the lamp spirits can only sleep forever. It is no different from death." Chunrui seemed to understand some reasons and asked, "The reason you fight with Medusa should be to use the snake blood fruit to maintain the energy of existence, right? What if I can try to provide you with enough energy?" The 2 lamp spirits looked at each other. "You can understand our language, which has met the requirements of a certain inheritance. If you can really help us get energy, then we will let you accept a very important test. As long as you can pass, you will get unimaginable power and wealth. The reason why Chunrei could understand the language of the lamp spirits was purely the credit of the super system, but he would certainly not state the reason. Moreover, the inheritance, mentioned by the lamp spirits, aroused his interest. The most important thing was that he needed to understand the secrets of the mind mastered by the lamp spirits in order to complete Sakali's mission. I think the battle between us will be suspended. My name is Chunrei. After a while, Chunrei converged the territory power. His figure flickered, and he appeared in front of Queen Medusa, who was chasing the lamp spirits. He stopped her attack and said, "Lon Liza, please stop first." Lon Liza glanced at the two safe and sound demon emperor-level lamp spirits, and her golden snake pupils shrank. "Chunrei, do you want to betray the trust and friendship of the Medusa family? I will always be a friend of the Cold Mist tribe." Chunrei shook his head. "I just want to help my friend Lon Liza and her people to truly end this war. Please believe me this time." Lon Liza stared into Chunrei's eyes, and she finally made a hissing command. All the Medusas stopped attacking and guarded the snake blood fruit tree area. The lamp spirits also gathered together under Genie's signal and did not move rashly. At present, both sides were still eyeing each other covetously, so Chunrei had to choose his words carefully. "Just as I can communicate with the Medusa family, I also have the ability to communicate with these lamp spirits. The snake blood fruit is an indispensable fruit for the Medusa to reproduce. At the same time, the lamp spirits also need the power of these fruits to maintain their lives. With the evenly matched strength of both sides, even if one side can get all the fruits in the end, it will have to pay a heavy price. What I want to do now is to really solve the difficulties faced by the Medusa and the lamp spirits." Lon Liza asked first. "What is your solution?" "Lon Liza, my solution is related to the future of the entire Cold Mist Medusa tribe. Before that, I want to ask you a question. If there is a better environment for reproduction and strengthening of the Medusa family, are you willing to migrate the tribe to another place?" In fact, this was Chunrei's plan from the beginning. Originally, in order to avoid unnecessary trouble, he wanted to wait until he returned from the mine to raise this matter, but now he simply said it in advance. A better environment? The suspicion in Lon Liza's eyes was even more. She looked at Chunrei vigilantly. "No matter what gifts this person offered before, I have only known him for a short time after all. Moreover, I deliberately showed mercy to those enemies just now. Asking this kind of question rashly now can't help but make people suspicious." Under Lon Liza's secret signal, many Medusa warriors' bows and arrows were aimed at Chunrei and the gold men. Chunrei pretended not to see it, and he said confidently, "What I mean by a better environment is, every Medusa warrior in the tribe will be equipped with those excellent armor and weapons. Every Medusa with higher demon strength can get a precious devil fruit to enhance their strength. Not only that, the Medusa tribe will obtain the fastest reproduction and growth under the protection of the Fountain of Vitality." Lon Liza's snake eyes flashed, then she shook her head simply. "I don't believe it." She was not a fool. She knew the quality and value of those armor and weapons very well. There were nearly 3,000 Medusas in the tribe, and the vast majority were higher demon and above. It was impossible for everyone to use that level of equipment. Besides, what is a devil fruit? Even if a great lord exhausted all his energy and wealth, it would still be difficult to find one. This person actually said that every Medusa of high demon could obtain one. It was simply ridiculous. As for the legendary Fountain of Life, there was no need to even think about it. This guy was full of clumsy lies and was not trustworthy. Just after Queen Medusa made this definition of Chunrei in her heart, a few fruits appeared in the palm of Lon Liza's outstretched palm. Information related to this fruit suddenly appeared in Lon Liza's bloodline inheritance memory. Her face showed disbelief. She picked up a fruit, looked at it carefully, and smelled it again. Finally, she determined that these were the legendary precious fruits that could enhance strength and possibly produce mutated bloodlines. "You accept these devil fruits first. I don't have too many on me. I will provide them to everyone in batches in the future. I keep my word." Every Medusa will get one. Chinrui saw Lan Liza's expression and handed her a bottle filled with water calmly. If the previous devil fruits had already made Lan Liza feel incredible, then the liquid in this bottle completely shocked her. Fountain of Vitality. At this moment, Queen Medusa almost thought that she had an illusion. I obtained this spring water from the Fountain of Vitality in another place through space magic. I can get more, but after the Fountain of Vitality leaves the source, it is generally only valid for 1 day. As Chinrui said, his hands took out a large basin like a magic trick. It was filled with the Fountain of Life. He accidentally spilled a little on the ground. The plants that had withered due to the battle immediately began to rejuvenate at a speed visible to the naked eye. The lamp spirits on the sides stared at the basin tightly, and Genie said, Sir Chinrui, the energy contained in these liquids is much richer than those fruits. Chinrui nodded. Since these spring water are useful to you, then it is easy. Don't worry. I still have a lot of spring water. Let's talk about it after solving the problem of the perfect Medusa. Lan Liza and the nearby Medusas looked at the basin, and their eyes seemed eager. The Medusas of the Cold Mist tribe can only rely on snake blood fruit to reproduce the next generation. The function of snake blood fruit is limited. Sometimes only 10 can produce one Medusa snake egg, and the survival rate is not high. Due to the influence of certain environments, the snake blood fruit tree has withered a lot, and the output of snake blood fruit has decreased year by year. Even without a powerful enemy like the lamp spirits coveting, the supply is far less than the demand. If this continues, the Cold Mist tribe can only leave the swamp and continue to look for a place with snake blood fruit. If they can't find it, then there is the danger of extinction. Now with the Fountain of Vitality, this biggest problem will be solved. The Fountain of Vitality can not only ensure the survival rate of future generations, but it is also said that it has a special effect. After ordinary Medusas consume it, they can transform into a human form and mate with foreign races, thus giving birth to more descendants with mutated bloodlines. What does my tribe need to pay? Finally, Lan Liza, as a queen, still kept a little calm and asked a key question. There is already a Medusa tribe that has expressed allegiance to me. I hope to get the power of the Cold Mist tribe. Chinrui knew that the Medusa tribe was suspicious by nature. If he beat around the bush, it would be self-defeating, so he simply went straight to the point and stated his real purpose. Your conditions are quite generous. The Fountain of Vitality alone makes me unable to refuse. Lan Liza's snake eyes narrowed slightly. But if you want my tribe to surrender to you, you still lack the most important condition. Power? Chinrui understood what Lan Liza meant. The strong is respected. This is the law that applies to every plane. He suddenly smiled. If I say that I have the real power to destroy the entire Medusa tribe, do you believe it? Queen Medusa shook her head very resolutely. Judging from Chinrui's breath, he is only one step away from the intermediate stage of the Demon Emperor, and I have already reached the intermediate stage of the Demon Emperor. At most, the other party is on par with me with special equipment, or means. At this moment, Lan Liza suddenly felt an extremely dangerous feeling. The source was this Chinrui who was, on par, with her. Not only Lan Liza, but the 2 Demon Emperor level lamp spirits also felt the strangeness, and they all showed vigilance. Chinrui's body suddenly shone with a bright light. The entire mangrove forest area was filled with this star-like brilliance. Everyone including Queen Medusa and the Demon Emperor lamp spirits felt a terrifying pressure, especially those ordinary Medusa warriors and lamp spirits. They could hardly move. The brilliance gradually converged, and Chinrui, who was equipped with gorgeous armor, appeared in everyone's sight. He slowly raised his arm. In his palm, a terrifying power was brewing rapidly. He looked at Queen Medusa. Lan Liza only felt that she was locked by a terrifying consciousness. The scales on the lower half of her body stood up because of fear. She instinctively realized that as long as the terrifying power of destruction was released, she would be annihilated in an instant without any suspense. This power has far exceeded the level of the Demon Emperor. Do you believe it now? Lan Liza. Chinrui's voice sounded. Liza barely condensed her strength, and nodded vigorously. Suddenly, she felt that the pressure was relieved. The star-like light dissipated, and the terrifying armored man returned to the original Chenrui. The characteristics of the Royal Star transformation were a bit similar to Clap. The maintenance time and power consumption were proportional to the fatigue period afterward. Chenrui still had to negotiate with the lamp spirits in a while, so he immediately ended the Royal Star transformation. After seeing Chenrui's power, Liza didn't hesitate anymore. She immediately made a solemn oath with the Medusa's faith. It was not ashamed to surrender to the powerhouse. Moreover, the fountain of vitality alone solved the biggest dilemma of the tribe's survival. If the tribesmen knew this news, they would definitely cheer. Subduing the Medusa tribe was smoother than expected. The next step was to solve the problem of the lamp spirits. Chapter 519. At present, the Dark Moon's war was urgent. Chenrui's most urgent need was to complete the plan for the White Feather Estate as soon as possible. Before that, he had to settle Sakali's commission. Therefore, the migration of the Cold Mist tribe Medusa was not in a hurry. He should make some preparations first. Under Chenrui's instruction, the Medusas picked half of the snake blood fruit and gave it to the lamp spirits. This harmonious scene was absolutely unimaginable before. After getting the snake blood fruit, the attitude of the lamp spirits finally eased. They took Chenrui through the mangrove and came to a cave. The entrance of this cave was cleverly camouflaged. It looked like a huge closed rock. If it weren't for the lamp spirits walking directly through the rock, they would think it was an illusion. This kind of camouflage effect could also be achieved with magic circles or dragon inscription, but Chenrui did not feel any fluctuations of power or elements when he passed through, so he couldn't help but secretly wonder. There were more than 20 lamp spirits in the cave, but the light patterns on their bodies were quite dim. Obviously, they were seriously lacking in energy and could not participate in the battle. Genie came to a strange object which was about 3 meters high. It seemed to be some kind of subtle instrument. Genie put the snake blood fruit into the huge container at the top. Gentia's hand glowed with brilliance. She inputted into a switch of the instrument, and the instrument began to emit colorful light. Chenrui noticed that the snake blood fruit in the top container was disappearing quickly, and 2 light blue cubes about the size of a palm appeared at the exit below the instrument. The breath of the 2 cubes made Chenrui feel very familiar. When the lamp spirits saw these 2 cubes, they were surprised. Genie placed the 2 cubes in front of the lamp spirits. The lamp spirits stretched out their hands and looked at the cubes from a distance. The dim and blurry light patterns on many lamp spirits gradually became clear. They should be absorbing the energy to restore their bodies. As the energy passed, the cubes began to become smaller, and finally disappeared. Genie and Gensha did not have the energy of the sucking cubes. Genie said to Chenrui, "Thank you for your help. If possible, I hope to get those strange spring water to make more energy cubes." Chenrui knew that the other party had a favor to ask of him, so he was not in a hurry to take out his bargaining chip. "We'll talk about this later. I want to understand something about the Lobe mine first. I came to the swamp this time because I received a commission to investigate and solve the mass disappearance of the Lobe mine miners. I hope you can give me an answer. You've already qualified for the inheritance test. I'm about to bring you to the ruins in the mine." Gensha opened her mouth and said, "We originally lived in some ruins of the ancient civilization underground. We mined the yuan ores underground to accumulate life energy. We usually hid in the ruins and rarely showed ourselves. We didn't have any conflicts with the miners either. But not long ago, a powerful enemy appeared underground and occupied all the resources, including the elemental mine. Many of our companions were killed and fell into a deep sleep. We were forced to leave the underground and come to the surface. Due to the lack of energy, we could only compete with those snake women for the fruits. What kind of enemy is it?" Chenrui knew the reason why the lamp spirits walked out of the mine and fought with Medusa. "A very powerful enemy. He is not very tall." Genie couldn't describe the specific characteristics of the other party for a while. He also has many strange servants. They are all transparent, and they are not affected by our negative magic. This characteristic is very similar to the metal men you took out previously. The miners are controlled and enslaved by them. Not tall? A transparent servant? Not affected by negative magic? Controlling the miners to mine? When these keywords were combined together, an image gradually became clear in Shinrei's mind. He was shocked in his heart. The director of the Lobe mine incident is actually that old friend. This is definitely not a happy thing. Last time in the underground crystal mine in the Crystal Valley, this old friend was not only severely injured by Paglio and almost lost his life under his planning, but he also lost the huge wealth accumulated for thousands of years. It could be said that he suffered a double loss. But there was Paglio at that time. If Shinrei had to face this dragons of the peak stage of the Demon Overlord alone, even if he used all his trump cards such as Royal Star Transformation, Scorching Dragon Kill, and Quasi-Artifact, there was no possibility of winning. He originally thought that this mission should not be difficult to complete, but he didn't expect it to be far more difficult than imagined. As Shinrei was thinking about countermeasures, Zhensha said, "Shinrei, let's go to the mine now. The ruins are deep in the mine, and there is special protection there. Outsiders can't enter, even that terrifying powerhouse." Shinrei remembered that the two women had said previously that if he could pass the test, he could get unimaginable power and wealth. His heart moved, but he didn't say that he knew the details of the enemy. He asked, "If I can get the inheritance of this ancient civilization, can I defeat that terrifying enemy?" Genie replied, "Before you get the inheritance, I don't have the authority to disclose any relevant information. If you can get the inheritance, you will naturally understand everything by then. However, before we take you to the mine, please give us some fruits or spring water that can make energy blocks for our companions in case of emergencies." Shinrei could hear that although these lamp spirits were intelligent beings, they didn't have too many schemes. The conditions they proposed were just because of the desire for energy. He immediately nodded and took out something. "I wonder if this thing can be converted into the energy blocks you need?" Genie and Zhensha looked over together. There was a fruit in the palm which was about the size of a goose egg. It was red, round and clear like a gem, exuding a special breath. This breath was very familiar to Genie and Zhensha. They said in surprise, "Such a rich breath of life energy. It will definitely be able to create energy blocks with high purity." Zhensha took the fruit and immediately came to the instrument. She carefully put the fruit into the upper container. The transformation time of this fruit was longer than the dozens of snake blood fruits. In the end, an energy block the size of the previous cube appeared below, but the color was not light blue, but purple-red. Top-level energy essence. The lamp spirits exclaimed one after another and surrounded him. Shinrei's guess came true, and he nodded secretly. The common feature of the snake blood fruit and the fountain of vitality is that there is a faint aura. The light blue energy block created previously clearly exudes pure aura, so he took out an aura fruit for the lamp spirits to experiment. As expected, it created top-level energy essence far beyond expectations. Genie took out the purple-red cube and held it in her hand like a treasure. A lamp spirit asked in surprise, "Genie, Zhensha, can we absorb this top-level energy essence to fully restore our strength?" Genie and Zhensha shook their heads together. This high-purity energy is much more precious than those yuan minerals. It is the most important power for the ruins to recover. We can't use it. As soon as this sentence came out, the lamp spirits all showed frustration. Shinrei knew that the power of these lamp spirits had not really recovered. With a thought, he took out another aura fruit. "I still have some of these fruits. Let everyone recover their strength first. I hope it can help you." The lamp spirits all showed their surprise. Even Zhensha and Genie were no exception. Zhensha said excitedly, "Shinrei, do you really have that kind of magical fruit with high concentration of life energy? If there are a lot of them, not only the sleeping lamp spirits can be resurrected again, but even the entire ruins may be repaired." Life energy? This word made Chunrui vaguely catch a hint of inspiration that might be related to the super system, but he couldn't tell why for a while. Facing the expectant eyes of the lamp spirits, Chunrui replied vaguely, "There are some, but not many." Of course, he would not hand over all his cards. In fact, although he had used the aura fruit to exchange for a large amount of aura before, there were still hundreds of them accumulated during this period. However, just the answer of "some" made the lamp spirits cheer in unison. This time, Genie and Jen Sha also participated in the absorption of energy. Chunrui was surprised to find that with the absorption of energy, the appearance of the lamp spirits was changing. The body that was a little close to nothingness gradually gave people a real texture of flesh and blood. The light patterns all over the body were also converging and finally disappeared. Next, a completely naked female body appeared in front of him. Light blue skin, silver hair, vermilion lips, a hot body, and no hair on the lower half of their bodies, giving people a strong sense of stimulation. Although Chunrui was no longer a virgin rookie, he still felt uncomfortable in such a large group of naked women. Fortunately, the nakedness only lasted for a few minutes. Clothes and decorations began to appear on the lamp spirits. It was just that the style of these clothes was quite revealing. The cleavage was revealed. With the veil covering the delicate face, it looked sexy and mysterious. It was worth noting that the power of the lamp spirits after changing had a kind of rebirth compared with before. It seemed that they had been in a state of lack of energy previously, causing them to be unable to exert their true strength. "Chunrui, no matter whether the inheritance is successful or not, your help will never be forgotten by the lamp spirits." Genie and Gensha folded their hands on their chests, leading the lamp spirits to salute. The appearance and figure of the lamp spirits were similar. The only difference was the color of their pupils. Genie and Gensha were golden, the rest were silver-white and light gray, which were related to their own power level. Soon after, deep in the main mine cave of the Lobe mine. "Be careful, the enemy should not be far away. I can already feel the strange blockade power, but the entrance of the ruins is still quite a distance away. If we break in by force, I'm afraid that the powerhouse will be alarmed. We have to find a way to unlock these blockade powers." It was Genie who brought Chunrui to the mine cave, while Gensha and the lamp spirits stayed in the cave just in case. The terrain of the main mine cave of the Lobe mine was more complicated, but the scale was much smaller than that of Mountain Shilong. Genie was extremely familiar with this place. She also had a special connection with the ruins she mentioned. She could freely move quickly in the mine cave without magic maps or lighting items. "I'll solve this, don't move first." Chunrui also felt the blockade power in Gensha's mouth. It was the breath of dragon inscription. As expected, this kind of inscription technique was also familiar. Genie watched in surprise as Chunrui used a method similar to the strange power. He took her carefully through the blockade and approached the destination step by step. In front of a long passage, the two heard footsteps coming from a distance. Genie suddenly took Chunrui's hand and pressed him against the rock wall. She stuck close to his back and whispered, "Don't move!" This posture was quite indecent, especially when Genie's body was no different from ordinary people now. The soft and suppressive feeling from behind made Chunrui's heart beat a little faster suddenly. Fortunately, he quickly stabilized his emotions. He saw a team of people coming from the lights in front. The most conspicuous in the team were a few tall crystal-clear figures. They seemed to be supervisors. They were escorting a group of miners who were dragging a cart. The cart was slowly filled with ores. "They really are crystal people." Chunrui narrowed his eyes. The crystal dragon, Jacob, was severely injured by Paglio in the Crystal Valley last time, and he used the strange red flower to aggravate his injuries. Now he must be using the same trick to occupy the mine pit and use the ores to heal his injuries. However, Chunrui did not move. He already understood that Genie used a chameleon-like method to conceal their breath and form, just like the camouflage in the cave where the lamp spirits temporarily lived. The crystal people and the miners passed by them without noticing. It was not until the footsteps were far away that Jeannie let go of her hand and removed the camouflage power. Chunrei felt a little awkward, but Jeannie herself didn't feel it at all. She continued to pull his hand and walk forward. After passing several dragon inscriptions along the way, Jeannie finally took Chunrei out of the guard range of the Crystal People and continued to go deeper underground. Then, Chunrei only felt that the surrounding scenery changed rapidly. He didn't know how many sections of rock walls they passed through, and they even escaped into the ground. Finally, the two stopped in front of a huge rock wall. Jeannie's body floated up gently, and she pressed on the rock wall in a special pattern. The rock wall emitted a colorful light which was particularly dazzling in this dark environment. This was a door. There was nothing special about the appearance, but it gave Chunrei an indestructible feeling. He had a hunch that even if he had the power of the peak stage of the Demon Overlord, he couldn't shake this door at all. "This is the Gate of Inheritance," as Jeannie said. A colorful light appeared on her fingertips. She tapped on the small cross-shaped keyhole in the center. The keyhole gradually became the size of a human. It was exactly the concave shape of a woman's body. Jeannie raised her arms and walked into the concave shape. It turned out that the key to open the door was actually herself. After Jeannie walked into the keyhole, the original thick and sturdy feeling of the door suddenly became thin and transparent, faintly revealing the unpredictable mist behind. "Go in quickly. The opening time of the Gate of Inheritance is limited. My life will disappear soon. Everything else is up to you. If you can get the inheritance, then you can resurrect me through the mind lamp." Chunrei knew that the price of opening this Gate of Inheritance was actually Jeannie's life. Fortunately, the lamp spirits were immortal. As long as the mind lamp was not destroyed, they could be resurrected repeatedly with sufficient energy. This was somewhat similar to the corpse necromancer. Without hesitation, he immediately walked into the gate. At the moment he passed through the gate, the scenery suddenly changed. The gate and the mist disappeared, and his body was suspended in a void. A voice sounded. "Welcome, newcomer. Are you willing to accept the test of the successor of the alchemy civilization? Ancient alchemy civilization? I don't seem to have heard of it." Since Chunrei walked into this door, he didn't think much and replied without hesitation. "I'm willing." Chapter 520. After getting an affirmative answer from Chunrei, the voice sounded again. "There is only one content of the test: survive. Failure means real death." As soon as the voice sounded, the scene changed again and became a huge volcanic cave. Boiling blood-red lava could be seen everywhere. In the terrifying high temperature, the vision became distorted, and the hot air was filled with suffocating oppression. The fiery red made Chunrei squint his eyes a little unaccustomed. He had an intuition that this scene did not seem to be a simple illusion, but it actually had a sense of reality. Once he died here, his entire consciousness would be erased, which was equivalent to real death. What the voice said was not an alarmist statement. What was even more strange was that he could sense the existence of the supersystem in his body, but he couldn't use any skills or power, as if his mind was isolated by some special power. In other words, he could only use his own strength of the early stage of the Demon Emperor. This cave was very large. The height alone was hundreds of meters. Chunrei didn't know what danger was waiting for him in front. He could only use his power to resist the high temperature. He stepped on the hot black rocks and carefully walked forward step by step. The temperature was getting higher and higher. Even the defense of the Demon Emperor could hardly stand it. He was sweating all over. If he stayed in this environment for a long time, his body would suffer irrecoverable damage. Chunrei's gaze fell on the lava area not far away, and his pupils suddenly contracted. There was something floating above it. A red flower. The petals were like clear crystals, but they were by no means dead. They had real vitality. They bloomed in this kind of magma that could melt everything, but they were not affected by the high temperature at all. Instead, they became more and more delicate. To be more precise, they were coquettish. The strange charm exuded by the red flower. If he didn't use his spirit power to resist, his mind would be completely lost in it and unable to extricate himself. It was not the first time that Chenrui saw this kind of flower. He had seen the same flower in the mysterious cave under the Crystal Valley. After he used the Star Gate to escape the danger by chance, the flower appeared in his hands without anyone noticing. Later, in the Bloody Empire's Mountain Sacred, this flower even moved the demigod powerhouse, Satan. Its name was the Flower of Abyss. Chenrui once asked Rala, but even the knowledgeable fairy dragon had never heard of the name Flower of Abyss. Now, the Flower of Abyss had appeared in front of him again in the inheritance trial scene of the ancient alchemy civilization. There must be a huge unknown secret hidden in it. What surprised Chenrui even more was that there was more than one Flower of Abyss. As he moved forward, the number of beautiful flowers that appeared in his sight gradually increased. 2, 3. Chenrui instinctively felt that he seemed to be getting closer and closer to a certain goal of the trial. Or perhaps it could be said that he was getting closer and closer to some great danger. There were bursts of roars coming from the cave ahead. Creatures that he had never seen before appeared in front of him. These creatures were about the size of imps. They had sharp claws, thin limbs, and exaggerated mouths that occupied half of their faces. The 2 rows of protruding fangs looked particularly ugly. Since he couldn't use the super system skills, Chenrui couldn't use analytical eyes to detect the opponent's race or strength, but the Demon Emperor level perception was still there. These monsters were strong and weak. The strongest was estimated to be around the Demon King level, and the weakest had the strength of higher demon. They exuded a fierce and brutal breath. They didn't retreat in fear because of Chenrui's Demon Emperor level strength. Instead, they rushed over fiercely. There were a lot of these little monsters. They didn't seem to be afraid of the temperature of the magma, and their jumping ability was very amazing. The one at the front jumped more than 10 meters and pounced on him. Before it touched Chenrui, its limbs were already shattered. Chenrui punched with both fists, and none of the monsters that rushed up were spared. The monsters at the back did not have the slightest fear or retreat because of the death of their companions. Instead, they were even more ferocious. At this time, the nearby Flower of Abyss was affected by some force and burst open. A red mist with a powerful breath wrapped the surrounding little monsters. The bodies of those little monsters began to twist and swell, turning into 2 meters tall, red, and ferocious-looking strong monsters. The fierce breath of these monsters was stronger, and their strength had also undergone a qualitative leap. Many of them even reached the Great Demon King level, and they had the new ability to spray high-temperature fireballs from their mouths. The pressure faced by Chenrui suddenly increased. The monsters that could be easily crushed with one punch in the past could only be killed with 2 or 3 concentrated punches now. Moreover, the opponent's counterattack was also quite sharp. The continuous fireballs bombarded him made him feel overwhelmed. If it was a dozen Great Demon King monsters, even without the super system, he could easily destroy them. However, there were nearly 1,000 monsters in front of him. There were hundreds of mutated Great Demon Kings. They were advancing wave after wave without fear of death. As the saying went, many ants could kill an elephant. After a long time, the wounds on Chenrui, who was surrounded, also began to increase. In this trial world, not only the super system, but also the original passive attributes and equipment on his body were useless. The speed of the surrounding monsters suddenly slowed down, and their abilities in all aspects were also declining rapidly. Some even killed each other. It turned out that Chenrui had already activated the power of Autumn Territory. All the enemies in the territory would be weakened, aged, and attached with various negative statuses. After the previous battle, Chenrui realized that the key point of these mutated monsters was their heads. His fists were like lightning. Wherever he passed, the monsters' heads exploded and died. After clearing the most threatening enemies around him, Chenrui punched again and hit the monster 5 meters away. There seemed to be some kind of turbulent power ripple in his sight. The bodies of dozens of small monsters and mutated monsters in the fan-shaped area were torn apart at the same time, and the severed limbs were flying everywhere. This wasn't the skill of the super system, but the overlapping force that Chenrui realized from the surfy sea training. Usually, it was at most contained in the fist to attack directly. It rarely broke out of his body and released it in the air like it did today. Generally speaking, Demon King level and Great Demon King level powerhouses already had the ability to release energy and launch long-range attacks such as shock waves. Chenrui had reached the Demon Emperor level, so this form of attack was naturally not a problem. It was just that the skills that came with the super system were more powerful, and the power consumption was less. The lethality and assurance in the battle were greater, so it was rarely used in actual combat. It was only used as a skilled training program to control power during training. For these Great Demon King and Demon King enemies, the lethality of the overlapping force was still quite commendable, but the power consumption was relatively greater. This situation was more obvious when he lost the passive attributes of astral form and damage absorption. Chenrui immediately changed the power of the territory. The autumn territory, that weakened and attached negative statuses, became a strange force field. The force field was full of strange crisscrossing forces. Even the monsters who were not afraid of high temperature felt an unusual heat and anxiety. Most of the attacks launched were melted and absorbed by this strange force field and transformed into Chenrui's own power. Chenrui's attack at this time had already carried the unique soul damage of the summer territory, and the soul power was the weakness of the monsters. Under the fierce attack of the overlapping force, the number of monsters that came one after another decreased sharply. Finally, they were all gone. The distorted force field gradually turned into a green breeze. Even the suffocating heat of the karst cave could not engulf this fresh and comfortable coolness. It was not until the injuries on Chenrui's body gradually recovered that the breeze disappeared. After Chenrui used the spring territory to heal his injuries, he retracted the territory power. He ignored the heat and fell to the ground panting. He used all his trump cards just now to eliminate these terrifying monsters. He consumed a lot of power, but at the same time, the harvest was not small. The overlapping force of broken body was not that great when he was training. Now that he used it in this group combat, he found that there were many places that needed to be improved. The power could be improved, and the consumption could also be reduced correspondingly. If the improvement was successful, it would be a new combat skill that was not inferior to the super system. In terms of the territory, in addition to some details that needed to be perfected, the flaws had also become obvious, which was the attack. Whether it was the autumn territory or the summer territory, they were mainly auxiliary and lacked real lethality. In fact, Chenrui had been thinking about this problem before. In his imagination, the last kind of winter territory was a territory that targeted this flaw. At present, the general framework of the winter territory was almost complete, but it still lacked the most important, soul. This was because this kind of territory was separated from the existence of the super system, so he couldn't sit back and enjoy the fruits of others' labor. He must comprehend it himself. After recovering for a while, Chenrui set foot on the road again. The number of flowers of abyss gradually increased, and more enemies were encountered. Not only these little monsters, but there were also more difficult unknown monsters. This kind of monster had curved horns on its head. It was strong and tall. Its eyes were burning with a flame-like red light. There were sharp bone spurs on its arms and shoulders. Its appearance was somewhat similar to the battle form of the great demon, but it was more terrifying and ferocious. Its light black skin revealed a flame-like red light. Its power was extremely violent. The whole thing was a killing machine. The monster had a higher level of wisdom and bloodline, so it could command the little monsters to attack. Chenrui already understood the terrifying role of the Flower of Abyss. These horned monsters were currently only at the Great Demon King level. Once they accepted the power of the Flower of Abyss, then it was possible to increase to the Demon Emperor level. Of course, the effect of the Flower of Abyss was not endless. After the buff effect, it would fall into a certain period of weakness. Chenrui's tactic was to stay away from the range of the Flower of Abyss as much as possible. He would use the combination of 3 territories to kill the horned monsters with the greatest threat at all costs first, then he would deal with those little monsters. In case he couldn't avoid the Flower of Abyss, he would try to use delaying tactics and wait until the buff effect was over before killing the enemy. In this trial world, there was only the consumption of power. There was no feeling of hunger or thirst. Despite the great physical consumption, Shinrei was still able to persist. Under the continuous killing and training, the use of the overlapping force became more and more proficient. Another mysterious feeling also became faintly clear, but he still couldn't figure out the key for a while. Roar! At the same time that Shinrei had a warning sign, a roar also sounded in the wide tunnel ahead. A group of strong horned monsters driving thousands of little monsters appeared in his sight. The red light in the eyes of the tallest horned monster was far better than its peers. It seemed to have the mutated elite power. Shinrei's expression suddenly changed because the mutated horned monster was holding a Flower of Abyss in its hand. Its fierce eyes locked on him tightly with a hideous smile on its face. The Flower of Abyss suddenly burst open. Several nearby monsters roared at the same time and began to mutate. Their bodies did not expand too much, but the red light in their bodies shone more brightly. Their curved horns, bone spurs, and limbs burned with a manic flame at the same time. Their breath suddenly doubled. Shinrei felt that the Flower of Abyss, as buff and effective number of horned monsters were weaker than the previous little monsters. It seemed that the mutation's buff was not unlimited. Even so, these horned monsters that had reached or were close to the Demon Emperor level were not what he could compete with in his current state. Not only that, the rest of the horned monsters also began to use the Flower of Abyss. The monsters whose strength had skyrocketed surged toward Shinrei like a tide. Shinrei turned around and ran without hesitation. Are you kidding me? Under this disparity in strength, any tactics are useless. It's more important to escape first. The mutated elite monster was powerful, and followed him closely. The flaming bone spur on its shoulder suddenly shot out like a sharp arrow. Shinrei dodged half a beat slower, and his left shoulder was penetrated by the bone spur. He felt that the flame was burning the tissue near the wound like magma. His blood was quickly evaporated, and even his bones were almost turned into ashes under this high temperature. The injured Shinrei suddenly slowed down. He suddenly turned around and punched. 7 huge wave-like surging energy hit the approaching elite monster. The monster's chest suddenly had a concave fist mark, and its body flew backward. Along the way, there was a flaming juice spilling, but it stood firm and did not suffer a fatal injury. This action made his speed even slower. In the blink of an eye, Shinrei was surrounded by his pursuers. Those monsters were very cunning. They did not attack directly. Instead, they urged the mutated monsters to besiege Shinrei desperately while they hid at the side and waited for an opportunity to launch a sneak attack. Shinrei knew that he could only fight with his life now. He made up his mind, endured the pain, pulled out the bone spur, held it in his hand as a weapon, and rushed toward the group of monsters. In the almost numb battle, all his moves were used. Attack, defense, and dodging were almost instinctively completed. The closer he was to the edge of life and death, the deeper the strange feeling was. As long as he grasped this feeling and continued to comprehend it, he would be able to truly master it. Unfortunately, Shinrei could not wait until this moment because his injuries were extremely serious. His strength was on the verge of collapse, and he was about to be completely drowned by the tide of monsters. The rock wall at the top of the cave suddenly began to tremble. Stalagmites kept falling. Suddenly, a big hole appeared with a loud bang. A black shadow fell from the hole rapidly, shaking the entire tunnel. This was a huge humanoid figure with a height of about 10 meters. Its whole body was made of dark golden metal, and its eyes glowed with light blue light. It was taller than the Asmodeus royal family's war puppet. Its appearance was somewhat similar to the mobile armor described in the fantasy novels of another plane in Shinrei's memory. As soon as this giant mecha stepped on the ground, several small monsters who couldn't dodge in time were suddenly trampled into meat sauce. The huge palm opened, and a cannon barrel appeared in the center. a golden beam of light shot out. Wherever it passed, the monsters were all turned into ashes. Black shadows continuously fell from the hole above. It was a kind of demonic beast with a crystal-clear body. This reminded Shinrei of the Crystal Man inexplicably. Then another familiar character appeared, lamp spirits. A lamp spirit came to Shinrei's side, reached out, and a white light fell on his body. His injuries began to heal quickly. This lamp spirit said something to Shinrei, but unfortunately, Shinrei now lost the super system's skills, so he couldn't understand what it said. It was certain that these lamp spirits, crystal demonic beasts, and the huge mecha were not enemies. Chapter 521. There were more and more reinforcements coming from the cave. There were 5 mega mecha, about 400 crystal demonic beasts, and about 100 lamp spirits. Looking at the situation, it should be the army of the Alchemy Civilization camp. Shinrei vaguely understood the content of this trial, which was to join the Alchemy Civilization side and eliminate the monsters in these caves. Although the Alchemy Civilization army was at a disadvantage in number, its combat power was far higher than the demonic monster army. The lamp spirits quickly released negative magic to put the enemy into various disadvantageous states. The crystal demonic beasts were strong and powerful, and they were not afraid of fireballs and elemental attacks. They were the main force of melee combat. The Mega Mecha's combat power was even more invincible. Soon, this group of monsters was completely annihilated. The karst cave environment was extremely sturdy. Even the power of the Demon Emperor could not shake or cause obvious damage. After the fierce battle ended, there were basically no traces left. The chest armor of the leading Mega Mecha slowly separated, and a female figure fell down. This woman was tall and thin with beautiful facial features. She had short black hair, and her appearance was no different from a normal human. She said a few words to Shinrei. Shinrei knew that these mecha were controlled by a pilot, but unfortunately, he couldn't understand what she said. Seeing that the other party was not hostile, he immediately nodded in a friendly manner. It was unknown if the woman understood Shinrei's meaning, but she also nodded to him and returned to the mecha's body. The chest armor was closed again. With a wave of her hand, the crystal demonic beasts rushed forward quickly. The mecha and the lamp spirits followed closely. Shinrei also followed the team. Although his injury had recovered a lot, it was not fully healed. In addition, his stamina consumption was huge. If he encountered the enemy just now again, it would definitely be a dead end. It was naturally much safer to follow these teams than to be alone. There were more and more flowers of abyss along the way, and the number of enemies was also increasing. In addition to the little monsters with excellent jumping ability, and the violent horned demonic monsters, 2 more powerful flame women appeared. They were wearing golden red armor and holding a long whip with flames and lightning in their hands. The flame girls had reached the strength of the Demon Emperor level. The strange thing was that they didn't seem to have territory power, but their strength and wisdom were quite terrifying. Not only could they cast the powerful magic of Firewall, but they also had a terrifying skill after using the Flower of Abyss, which was the flame shield that reflected melee attacks. As long as it wasn't a one-hit kill, the flame shield would reflect a portion of the attack. This skill was a passive attribute, and it was quite overpowered. Shinrei seized the opportunity to launch a powerful sneak attack, knocking the heavily injured flaming woman to the ground. However, the flaming woman did not die immediately. As a result, Shinrei was repelled by his own overlapping force and vomited a mouthful of blood on the spot. Not only Shinrei, but even the Crystal Beast and the Mega Mech had suffered quite a bit in the hands of the Fiery Lady. The Mega Mech was too large, and its movement was relatively slow. It was extremely afraid of the continuously burning Firewall. The Crystal Beast, who was immune to the Firewall, could hardly resist the power of the Flame Shield and Flame Lightning Whip. Fortunately, the passive magic of the lamp spirits was still quite sharp. In the end, the Fiery Lady was annihilated under the siege, and the monsters led by her were all wiped out. After this battle, the Alchemy Civilization team suffered heavy losses. 2 mechs were destroyed, the pilots were killed, and the lamp spirits and the crystal demonic beasts suffered more than half casualties. On the other hand, Shenrei fought freely with the help of the lamp spirits' healing and buff magic. He exerted the 3 territory powers to the fullest and became more proficient. At the same time, he had a deeper understanding of the 4th territory power. After 2 more battles along the way, they successfully joined up with several friendly teams. They also saw a new friendly creature. This was a giant crystal demonic beast with a body length of more than 10 meters and a height of about 6 meters. Its appearance was a bit similar to the T-Rex in Shenrei's memory, but its forelimbs were stronger, it had horns on its head, and there were protrusions similar to bone spurs on its back. In addition to its super strength, the giant crystal beast could also spray a kind of liquid to solidify the enemy into crystals and shatter them. This surprised Shenrei secretly. He thought of the power of the crystal dragon. Is there any special relationship between the crystal dragon and this giant crystal beast of the ancient alchemy civilization? The team was getting stronger and stronger, and the enemies they encountered were more and stronger. After several fierce battles, they finally reached the final battlefield, a super huge cave. To be more precise, it was a lair. The situation of this lair made Shenrei take a deep breath. Looking around, there were countless monsters. The little monsters that once troubled Shenrei were only the lowest level cannon fodder. The number of horned demonic monsters was equally astonishing, and there were hundreds of flame women. What was even more terrifying was that the lair was covered with fiery red vines. There were countless flowers of abyss on the vines, and many of them were still budding. At the root of the vines, where the monsters were most concentrated, there was a creature several times larger than the Mega Mecha. This creature was brownish red all over, and its appearance was somewhat similar to a sunflower. It was surrounded by a circle of long tentacles that faintly emitted red light. There were also many fiery red balls in the nearby magma area. Many of the balls twisted and cracked, revealing the monster body wrapped in mucus inside. The huge mouth in the center of this sunflower squirmed and spat out another batch of balls. It seemed to be the mother of these monsters. There were already several batches of the alchemy civilization army fighting with the nearby monsters. All kinds of powerful forces collided with each other, and exaggerated explosions and lethality could be seen from time to time. Due to the large number of enemies and the terrifying effect of the Flower of Abyss, the alchemy civilization army was completely at a disadvantage. Even a creature with demon overlord level combat power like the giant crystal beasts could not avoid falling. The Mega Mecha next to Shenrei pointed at the huge mother, and the army immediately rushed forward. They were soon surrounded by the swarming monsters. The flame woman flying in the air waved a terrifying whip, and a wall of fire appeared on the ground. The violent horned demonic monsters roared and slammed into the crystal demonic beasts team. Countless mutated little monsters swarmed over like a tide. With Shenrei's strength, he could only be regarded as average in this level of war, but his territory power was very outstanding. Besides, he also had the gravity bestowed by the Earth Elemental King, which could have an unexpected effect on the flame woman flying in the air. After the previous few battles, Shenrei's cooperation with his teammates became more and more skilled. There were 3 lamp spirits who were buffing around him, and the Mega Mecha controlled by the black-haired woman and a group of crystal demonic beasts. It was just like a small combat team. However, there were too many enemies, and they were still increasing. The monsters that had just been born could immediately participate in the battle. The most terrifying thing was a terrifying figure in front of the mother. 2 giant crystal beasts finally broke through the defense line and rushed to the mother. This figure just shook, and the 2 demon overlord-level giant beasts were cut into several pieces at the waist. This was a strong monster with a ferocious appearance. The muscle texture was like a natural armor. There were wing-like bone wings on its back. Its whole body was bathed in fire, and it was holding a great sword in its hand. It was this great sword that killed the 2 giant crystal beasts in the blink of an eye. Then several Mega Mecha and giant crystal beasts of the alchemy civilization rushed to the mother, and they all fell under the monster's great sword without exception. Although the monster's strength was terrifying, it was unwilling to take the initiative to attack. It just guarded in front of the mother and killed all those who crossed the boundary. Chinrei couldn't use the super system now. The snake pattern badge placed in the storage warehouse that could summon the demigod powerhouse, Satan, couldn't be used. Moreover, the current trial environment was very special. It might not be a real scene. Even if he could use the snake pattern badge, it might not be useful. Judging from the Alchemy Civilization Army's desperate assault, the ultimate goal of this operation was to destroy the source of the monsters and the Flower of Abyss, which was the Huge Mother. This should also be the final mission of Chinrei's inheritance trial. Chinrei noticed that the Mega Mecha who rushed to the mother carried an explosive. After being killed by the Great Sword monster, a Mega Mecha detonated this explosive in advance, turning the surrounding monsters into flying ashes. Chinrei couldn't help but have a thought. Under the desperate battle regardless of losses, Chinrei's team had slowly narrowed the distance between them and the mother, but they were also getting closer to the terrifying Great Sword monster. Another 2 giant crystal beasts fell under the Great Sword. According to the development of this battle situation, it was only a matter of time before the Alchemy Civilization Army was completely annihilated. Chinrei made up his mind and finally made a decision. He knocked on the leg of the Mega Mecha in the small combat team, made a gesture of pushing out with his palm, and pointed to the mother in front of him. After these battles, Chinrei and the woman had a lot of tacit understanding. The woman immediately understood his intention and said something that he couldn't understand through some kind of communication device. The lamp spirit on the side immediately handed a cube that was suspected to be a high-density explosive into his hand, then the mecha's huge palm grabbed his body. At this time, the 3 giant crystal beasts and 4 Mega Mecha in the team had already rushed to the Great Sword monster, and the mecha controlled by the woman followed behind. After the Great Sword monster slashed the 2 giant crystal beasts, Chinrei yelled, "Now!" Not sure if the woman understood his words, but the mecha arm holding his body suddenly separated from the torso. The tail ejected a strong flame and whistled toward the mother. However, the strength of the Great Sword monster was far beyond Chinrei's imagination. Just as the mecha arm approached the mother, a terrifying feeling suddenly hit Chinrei's heart. This was a hatred that seeped deep into the soul. Its will was so strong that it could destroy the world. It was just like the aura that could destroy the world in the underground cave of the Crystal Valley. However, the feeling now was much clearer and more terrifying. In an instant, Chinrei felt that everything had slowed down, leaving only this lightning-like destruction. He instinctively felt that as long as he was swept by this destructive thought, his whole body would be annihilated into powder. At the moment of life and death, all of Chinrei's potential was stimulated. For a time, the 3 territories of spring, summer, and autumn, as well as the winter territory, that had not yet been fully formed, also burst out. He only hoped to block it and buy time to pass through this destructive hatred and destroy the mother. Unfortunately, in the face of this will that was enough to kill a demon overlord powerhouse in an instant, Chinrei's power was still too weak. Seeing that he was about to be annihilated, the 4 territories that erupted suddenly formed a strange cycle. In the strange rhythm produced by this cycle, everything around him suddenly stopped, including the destructive will, as if everything was still. The only thing that didn't stop was Chinrei's flying figure. This stillness only lasted for 2 seconds, then everything around him moved like lightning. In these 2 seconds, Chinrei had avoided the terrifying power of hatred. Although he avoided the killing blow of the Great Sword monster head-on, under a mysterious law, his legs below his knees, along with his giant arm, suddenly broke apart. Chinrei endured the severe pain and still flew toward the mother with all his strength by the inertia. The moment he entered the giant mouth, he activated the exploding cube in his hand. He only felt that his eyes were full of dazzling destructive light. In an instant, he completely lost consciousness. Not knowing how long had passed, Chinrei slowly opened his eyes and found that he was soaking in a container. His body had disappeared, leaving only a faint trace of consciousness. Days passed. Under the effect of the magical solution in the container, his soul and body began to regenerate little by little until he recovered. What happened next seemed like a real dream. No, this is reality. After recovery, Chenrui became the hero of the entire alchemy civilization because of this brilliant battle record. He obtained the powerful inheritance of the alchemy civilization, and his strength advanced by leaps and bounds. He also owned a huge mobile castle. In the bedroom of the castle, the black-haired beauty who once drove the Mega Mecha, along with a group of beautiful lamp spirits, served the owner of the castle wholeheartedly with her seductive body. Guanyin sitting on the lotus, the old tree roots, the jade-like harem flower, the beautiful woman playing the flute, the group of phoenixes playing the dragon, all kinds of strange positions and parts made Chenrui, as the king, immerse himself in the absurd and promiscuous harem life all day long. He was very happy. "Master, what's wrong? Are you not satisfied with my service?" A beautiful lamp spirit who knelt under Chenrui to serve saw her master was a little stunned. She carefully withdrew the huge thing in her mouth and asked in horror. After obtaining the inheritance, Chenrui could already understand their language. He shook his head when he heard the words. "No, you're fine. It's just that I've been thinking about it these days. I seem to have forgotten something important. Now that the monsters have been eliminated, Master doesn't have to worry." As the lamp spirit said, she lowered her head and swallowed the thing slowly. She continued to serve. The comfortable feeling of being wrapped in warmth made Chenrui couldn't help but narrow his eyes. At this moment, the appearance of the silver-haired and blue-skinned lamp spirit under him suddenly changed. She became a beautiful girl with short red hair and wheat-colored skin. This girl looked quite familiar to Chenrui. When he looked at her, she changed back to the appearance of the lamp spirit. When the excitement reached a certain critical point, the surging lust finally spurted out. However, the lamp spirit suddenly turned into the familiar red-haired girl. Her cheeks were flushed as she shook her head. Then, the girl frowned and completed the swallowing action with difficulty. Her bright red eyes flashed with shyness and expectation. "I should be pregnant with your child like this, right?" Chenrui was shocked and stood up slowly. This time, he ignored the surprised inquiry of the nearby lamp spirits. He just looked out of the window in a daze. His eyes suddenly became a little moist. "I finally understand what I can't remember. Damn it, how can I forget the most important thing?" Chenrui closed his eyes. It turned out that all of this was not true. It was a dream that he almost couldn't wake up from. As Chenrui, who had experienced refined mind, he only needed a key point to wake up. The moment he opened his eyes again, before he could see the surrounding situation clearly, he felt that a powerful soul power was constantly pouring into his brain, and the warning sound of the super system was constantly sounding. A large number of unknown soul power was found. Consciousness is in danger of being covered. Do you want to activate the star-devouring mode? Soul power? Consciousness coverage? Chenrui suddenly understood. Damn it! What inheritance! It's simply trying to possess. Star-devouring mode, activate! Chapter 522. As soon as the star-devouring mode was activated, the terrifying soul power suddenly surged toward the black hole, like a tide. However, the super system's warnings still continued. The amount of invading soul energy is too large. It is recommended to use the star conversion mode at the same time. Otherwise, it will overflow after 10 minutes. Chenrui knew that the huge soul energy, accumulated, was produced when he lost consciousness. Fortunately, it was not too late for him to wake up. Once his consciousness was completely covered by this foreign soul, even if the super system automatically assimilated this soul power, his original consciousness would be erased. Chenrui activated the star conversion mode without hesitation. The current star conversion had evolved a lot compared to the past. Coupled with the understanding of the summer territory, he could directly absorb and resolve the devoured power of star devouring, like the North Sea divine power in the martial arts novels. However, this power was still too large, and the amount that entered Chenrui's consciousness was too much. As soon as he activated star devouring, the terrifying soul power surged like a flood. It didn't take long for the super system to issue frequent warnings. Chunrei was like a hungry person desperately eating, but no matter how hungry he was, he would explode at some point. Now, the frequency of star conversion could not keep up with the speed of star devouring. Chunrei's muscles gradually distorted irregularly. What was even more uncomfortable was his consciousness. The star territory was sometimes blurred and sometimes clear, and the light of the sun also dimmed. In fact, the supersystem itself did not collapse. It was more of an illusion caused by the strong impact on Chunrei's own consciousness. This also showed that he was on the verge of danger. Chunrei had experienced the test of refined mind in the Aliyah state. With his current state of mind, he did not need to fear the danger of inner demons or losing his will. However, the capacity of his consciousness was always limited. Judging from the quantity and quality of the soul power that poured in, the level of this consciousness from the ancient alchemy civilization was far beyond Glorfin's demon overlord level. It should have reached the demigod level. If he could decompose and absorb this demigod consciousness bit by bit in an orderly manner, then Chunrei's strength would improve greatly step by step. However, he couldn't slow it down even if he wanted to. In the face of the terrifying power that was constantly surging out, not only his consciousness, but even his body was filled and swelled up by a kind of substantial power. His entire body was about to explode. Suddenly, a light flashed in his eyes, and they were replaced by a pair of terrifying red eyes with a black background. Layers of black vortexes appeared around his body, faintly emitting an aura of destruction. As soon as this state appeared, the devouring and absorption of the soul suddenly sped up, and the feeling of explosion gradually disappeared. Not long after, the demonic blood-red eyes returned to black and white. Chunrei continued to grit his teeth as he panted. He instinctively felt that if Shura absorbed this kind of soul force, then even if he was lucky enough to avoid the danger of exploding, he would definitely be devoured by Shura. Shura didn't seem to be willing to give up. From time to time, he would try to seize the initiative in his consciousness. This caused Chunrei to be attacked from both front and back. The situation was quite bad. Chunrei desperately suppressed Shura's will. He roared and began to attack everything around him crazily, venting the power that was about to explode out of his body. However, this kind of attack was like drinking poison to quench thirst. Gradually, his consciousness began to be in a blurry state. In a trance, he seemed to have destroyed many things along the way. The surrounding dim scenery quickly retreated, and the sound of shattering and collapsing sounded continuously. When he finally calmed down, he found that he was already outside the ruins. There was a light in front of him, and he could faintly hear the sound of digging rocks. It turned out that he was in the mine area. This movement was not small. The dragon inscription that was initially protecting and warning had already been triggered. Several crystal men walked toward this side. Before they could see Chunrei clearly, their bodies were shattered by a powerful force. Finally, Chunrei was still able to maintain his sanity. He did not hurt those frightened miners, but he eliminated all the crystal men in his sight. There was a roar from the depths of the mine. The sound came from far away in the blink of an eye, and a powerful pressure came head-on. The crystal men in the nearby mine were fine. The weak miners were shocked by this sound. They were bleeding from their 7 orifices and were seriously injured. Some even fainted. If it was a normal time, this powerful pressure of the peak stage of the demon overlord that contained the talent of the dragons would make Chunrei's mind violently shocked. However, at this time, his mind was surging with a higher level of soul power. Not only did he not retreat, but he roared and charged forward instead. Jacob! It was the crystal dragon Jacob who roared with the dragon's demeanor. After being severely injured by Paglio in the Crystal Valley last time, he finally found this place to heal, but he encountered an intruder again. Now that he heard the other party calling his name directly, he couldn't help but be startled. He saw a figure rushing toward him. Although the power fluctuation was strong, the breath he revealed was only at the Demon Emperor level. Reckless thing! You know my name, yet you still dare to come here to die! Jacob didn't care about the origin of this person. Those who dared to disturb his healing had to die. He sneered at the moment. As he was about to crush this overconfident demon emperor, he suddenly saw a fist enlarging in front of him. Bang! The speed and power of this punch were far beyond Jacob's expectation. He was unprepared. His entire body flew backward involuntarily under the impact of the violent power. His neck was almost twisted to the back of his head, and there was a dent in the fist mark on his face. Jacob was enraged, but that figure caught up to his figure in midair like the wind. With another heavy punch, it hit the crystal dragon's abdomen. This punch caused Jacob to fly backward at an abrupt speed, and his body was embedded into the rock wall. Shinrei didn't give the opponent a chance to breathe. As he was about to continue to bombard, he suddenly felt a pain in his chest. He had been punched. At this time, Jacob's roar resounded through the cave. Logically speaking, even with the protection of the mystic jade armor, the angry punch of the peak stage of the demon overlord was enough to break Shinrei's sternum through the armor. However, this punch only made him take a few steps back. The shallow white mark on his chest disappeared instantly. Instead, he felt that the skyrocketing power in his body was relieved a little. Jacob's realm and strength were far better than Shinrei. He was just careless and got punched twice. Under the burning rage, his attack shrouded Shinrei like a storm. Shinrei's muscle reflexes had reached an amazing level under the stimulation of the surging power that was in urgent need of catharsis, but his consciousness still couldn't keep up with the level of the peak stage of the demon overlord. Moreover, it was the time of violent disorder now, so it was difficult to react in time. He could only rely on some instinctive actions to resist, so he was at a disadvantage for a while. In the blink of an eye, Shinrei didn't know how many attacks he had been hit, but this kind of blow that was enough to destroy his body on normal days now alleviated the crisis of his body exploding. His spirit power was rising steadily in the process of constantly absorbing soul power. His perception was getting stronger and stronger, and the timing and trajectory of Jacob's punches became clearer and clearer. Bang! Shinrei blocked Jacob's elbow in time, then he hit the crystal dragon with a headbutt. While the other party retreated dizzily, Shinrei caught up with a powerful knee strike, then he punched Jacob away. In a certain cave in the mine, the lamp spirits who were resting felt the ground suddenly trembling, and it was getting more and more intense, as if something terrifying was about to break out of the ground. Gensha hurriedly led the lamp spirits to transfer the energy conversion machine outside the cave. Not long after they left the cave, they felt that the mountain was collapsing and the ground was cracking. Two terrifying breaths soared into the sky, and the sound of collision kept coming. Two figures attacked each other from midair to the ground. The scene was extremely fierce. The surroundings were full of terrifying traces of destruction. Even the Medusa in the mangrove forest was alarmed. Jacob had the upper hand from the beginning until they were evenly matched now. The more he fought, the more frightened he became. How could he still think that this opponent is a demon emperor? How can there be such a terrifying demon emperor fighting with the dragons with the strength of the peak stage of the demon overlord to this extent? This opponent is unfathomable. Sometimes he seems to be a different person. His attack methods are even weirder. Even Jacob is inevitably shocked by the destructive breath. "Who the hell are you?" Jacob forced Shinrei back with a punch and shouted. The battle with Jacob allowed Shinrei to successfully find the outlet of his soul power. He felt great as the crisis of exploding was resolved a lot. He tried his best to suppress the surging power at the moment, and he smiled grimly. "Do you still remember the old friend who dealt with you with Paglio in the Crystal Valley? It's a pity that your wealth is gone, otherwise I don't mind taking it again." Jacob's pupils shrank, and his murderous intention was great. "It's you!" This person used the identity of a genius mechanic master and a magic circle master to deceive his trust. He stole the ancient moon's slate and even colluded with a terrifying woman to destroy the Crystal Valley that he had been operating for many years. Then, he attracted the strongest enemy in his life and took away the treasures that he had accumulated for many years. He was Jacob's most hated enemy. Facing such an enemy with deep hatred, the crystal dragon's pale green eyes were red. He didn't need to talk nonsense anymore. He roared, his power skyrocketed, and he attacked fiercely. Chinrui's one sentence successfully pulled the hatred. The crystal dragon's reaction was exactly what he wanted. He let go of his suppressed power and charged forward. Jacob attacked for a while. Seeing that he couldn't defeat Chinrui, he shook his body and revealed his original body. A crystal dragon of about 10 meters swept its tail. Chinrui didn't avoid it. He crossed his arms and made a forceful posture. However, the strength of the dragon body was far better than the human form. This sweep shook his body away. Before he landed, a dragon breath wrapped around him. This dragon breath contained the terrifying power of crystallization and explosion. Chinrui seemed to be caught off guard, and he was sprayed directly. His whole body suddenly solidified into a piece of crystal. Jacob roared proudly, and the crystal instantly exploded, shattering into pieces. However, the crystal dragon's eyes suddenly revealed a look of vigilance. It saw a figure pouncing down from the sky, and a punch that contained a huge force hit its wing. Then, the sound of attacks coming from the dragon's body kept coming. The explosion just now only shattered a layer of crystal shell. Chinrui in the center was not crystallized by the dragon breath. Instead, this blow reminded him of the mad beast, Raphael, and Kia's mother, Freya, who were killed by Jacob in the Crystal Valley with the same method. He was angry in his heart, and his attacks became more and more violent. Although the power of the dragon body had become stronger, the larger body also meant that the target could be attacked was larger, and there were more blind spots. Under Chinrui's fierce attack, Jacob gradually fell into a disadvantage. Jacob flapped his wings and flew away. He stretched out his neck and let out a long roar. His entire body trembled and countless scales fell down. These scales turned into crystal pillars and appeared in the surroundings. The entire space turned into a world of crystals, crystal domain. Chinrui had seen the crystal dragon's territory twice, but the feeling of the bystanders in the past was completely different from the current ones. In the entire crystal territory, except for the sky, there was a turbulent ocean. There was no land. There was a little crystal light in the ocean, which seemed to be flowing liquid crystals. Connecting the ocean and the sky were countless huge crystal pillars, which looked magnificent. This territory was not only beautiful, but all the power related to magic elements did not work in this territory. It could be called the absolute nemesis of the magic system. Not only that, Chinrui felt that the pillars and the ocean had some kind of resonance. The power in his body was fading quickly, and the attack was also disintegrated under this fluctuation. When it hit Jacob, it only caused a few waves in the ocean below, but the crystal dragon itself was not hurt at all. It was equivalent to Jacob had perfectly integrated with the heaven and earth in the entire territory. How could Chinrui shake the power of heaven and earth alone? The crystal breath in this territory was extremely strong. Even if he stood still, his body had a faint feeling of gradually crystallization. The real territory of the peak stage of the Demon Overlord was really incomparable to the Demon Emperor level pseudo-territory. Chinrui's current, unexpectedly strong strength was only caused by the demigod power that almost exploded. It was equivalent to a kind of venting, but it was not endless. Once this kind of power was crystallized, not to mention returning to its original form, he would definitely not be able to defeat Jacob of the peak stage of the Demon Overlord. If he continued to fight like this, he would definitely be defeated, so he must kill Jacob before his skyrocketing soul power was exhausted. The sea was turbulent. Jacob was hit by Chinrui hundreds of punches in a row, but he was still safe and sound. With a sweep of his giant tail, he was shaken into the sea. The seawater suddenly turned into solid crystal, solidifying Chinrui's body, and he couldn't move for a while. Jacob did not attack. He just urged the power of the territory to constantly reinforce and thicken the enemy's power. The seawater constantly washed the solidified crystal stone, making it bigger and bigger. With the characteristics of the crystal territory, the opponent's power would be exhausted by then, and he would finally turn into a lifeless crystal. When he was exerting his strength, Jacob suddenly shuddered inexplicably. He felt that there was a breath in the crystal territory that was getting stronger and stronger, and it gradually filled the entire territory. This was a huge soul power, and it seemed to have some incredible characteristics. For the crystal dragon, this quality, feeling had a kind of innate coercion. It gave birth to a strong shock in his heart, as if a servant saw his master. The vast soul coercion power suddenly turned into a burst of chill with a destructive breath. For a while, the flow of the entire ocean became slow, and the sea's surface gradually solidified. This was not crystallization, but freezing. Crack! A crack appeared on one of the crystal pillars. Then 2, 3, 10. Under the influence of the terrifying low temperature that penetrated deep into the soul, the crystal pillars were frozen and cracked, and the ocean had already become an ice world. Putting aside the destructive power contained in the chill, the key was that the special coercion made it difficult for Jacob to exert his own power. He activated the power of the territory several times, but he couldn't dispel the chill. While he was in shock, he suddenly felt a strong and fierce aura coming from below, and the entire crystal territory was reflected in a fiery red color. When he looked down, he saw a tall unknown demonic beast wrapped in a powerful and terrifying aura breaking out of the ice and rushing toward him. In an instant, a strong sense of crisis arose in the crystal dragon's heart. Chapter 523. Looking at this snake-like flame, behemoth, the crystal dragon instinctively felt a kind of oppression. Not only was it the sole oppression in the chill, but this behemoth that was baring its fangs and brandishing its claws seemed to have a natural coercion similar to rank. The crystal dragon even had an illusion that this was a real dragon. "I, the dragons, am just a lizard with bat wings. How is this possible? It's just an unknown demonic beast that is simulated by power." The destructive icy breath didn't conflict with the scorching dragon that was bathed in flames at all. Instead, it fueled the fierceness. Before the dragon arrived, the murderous aura had already locked onto Jacob tightly. Jacob couldn't avoid it. Facing the inexplicable coercion of the scorching dragon, he also had a strong unwillingness in his heart. His transparent dragon body emitted a surging green flame, and he directly faced the scorching dragon. In the blink of an eye, the crystal dragon that was emitting green flames and the scorching dragon that was surrounded by flames had collided fiercely in midair. The entire crystal territory trembled, and huge cracks appeared on the frozen sea. Those crystal pillars that were frozen and cracked collapsed one after another. Countless ice fragments and crystal fragments flew all over the sky. On the surface, the crystal dragon successfully resisted the power of the scorching dragon. Both sides were evenly matched. However, Jacob now knew that this scorching dragon was more terrifying than he imagined. The innate coercion was actually not an illusion. Not only that, the power of the crystal territory was also restrained to the lowest point under the destructive chill that permeated the soul coercion. It was the first time in his tens of thousands of years of life that his body and territory were restrained by a similar rank. Although Jacob was furious and unbelievable, the situation was quite bad now. His body was pushed into the sky by the scorching dragon bit by bit. More and more crystal pillars collapsed, and the crystal territory was on the verge of collapse. Crack! Countless fine cracks appeared on the crystal dragon's body. He hadn't recovered from the injuries he suffered when fighting for the silver box, and he was severely injured by Catherine and Paglio. Now, facing the huge pressure of the scorching dragon, his body had begun to be overwhelmed. Suddenly, there was a loud noise. The sky, the frozen seaside, and the towering crystal pillars, all shattered in an instant. In midair, a gigantic translucent dragon body howled miserably as it flapped its wings and flew far away. Along the way, shattered scales and crystals continuously fell from the sky. Meanwhile, the flaming flame dragon soared into the sky arrogantly as if it was mocking its fleeing opponent. At that moment, Jacob's heart was not filled with hatred, but fear. This enemy was simply his nemesis. He was even more nemesis than poison dragon Paglio. The first time he met this Arthur, his ancient runes slate was stolen, and he was severely injured by that woman. The second time he met this fellow, he was heavily injured by Paglio, and the wealth he had painstakingly accumulated was taken away. The third time he met this enemy, he didn't have the demon realm's number one woman by his side, nor did he have the old enemy from 2,000 years ago. He was alone. Logically speaking, it was just the right time to crush him and wash away his shame. However, he didn't know until he made a move. Once he made a move, he was shocked. This enemy's strength actually increased to the extent that it almost killed him. If I didn't use the power of the self-exploding territory to divert the scorching dragon, I'm afraid I would have been torn apart by the scorching dragon. Now that I'm injured, I'll definitely die if I don't escape. Looking at the crystal dragon disappearing into the sky, Chinrei dispersed his power and slowly fell to the ground. It wasn't that he didn't want to pursue and kill Jacob. The scorching dragon kill just now had successfully erupted most of the undigested power, and the crystal dragon detonated the territory power at the risk of being seriously injured. It just happened to offset all the remaining soul power. In other words, the soul power that wanted to possess was finally exhausted by star devouring, plus star conversion, plus battle venting. If Jacob didn't escape or turn back now, then the one running would be Chinrei. This was called being afraid of both sides. Now that the crystal dragon had fled far away in fear, Chinrei was just relieved. He slowly adjusted the newly obtained power in his body. This time, he could be considered to have escaped from the inheritance. Calculating carefully, the harvest was equally huge. Obviously, the so-called inheritance was just a scam. The previous volcanic cave trial should be a link similar to testing the host. If he failed, he might really be eliminated and die. After completing the cave mission, his qualification to receive the inheritance, actually, the possession, was determined. The later gentleness was actually the beginning of the possession. In the process of falling into it, his consciousness would be defenseless, and he would be easily possessed. It was a pity that the demigod's soul didn't expect that there was such a heaven-defying thing like the super system. As a result, it failed to occupy the demigod's nest, but it became Chinrei's nutrients instead. Fortunately, Chinrei used the battle with Jacob to vent his excess power. Otherwise, with his demon emperor-level physique, he definitely couldn't digest the demigod's soul. Even if his body didn't explode, his consciousness would be devoured by Shura. In the super system status bar, the comprehensive strength value had become A+, the peak stage of the demon emperor. This suffering was not in vain after all. Chinrei showed joy. When his consciousness fell on the A+, the specific values appeared again. Physique A+, Strength A+, Spirit S+, Speed A+. Spirit S+? What is this situation? Chinrei almost fainted from the sudden excitement. He did feel that his soul had expanded countless times. This kind of growth was specifically manifested in spirit power. Unfortunately, he was not a magician, otherwise the growth would be direct attack power. Even so, the benefits of the qualitative change of spirit power were quite great. For example, he used spirit power to judge Jacob's attack earlier. Chinrei sensed the situation in his body, and he suddenly looked enlightened. It turned out that in addition to the power vented in the battle, the demigod soul of the alchemy civilization actually caused the qualitative change of spirit power. What really improved his physical strength and made it reach the later stage of the demon emperor was the trace of demigod power that Satan once implanted in his body. Under the influence of the similarly demigod and a much larger number of souls, Satan's trace of power had been completely absorbed. In this way, one of the hidden dangers in his body was also eliminated. What about dual training in the future? Don't be afraid. There is still a huge amount of unconverted soul power in star devouring. I can also benefit my women through sex. In addition to the enhancement of strength, another big gain was the realization of the fourth territory, winter territory. Completing the winter territory was Chinrei's long-cherished wish, but unfortunately, he couldn't get it before. This trial fell into a bitter battle when he couldn't use the super system, which gave him the best opportunity to hone himself. Especially at the critical moment of life and death when facing the great sword monster, he accurately grasped that wonderful realization. This realization was further put into practice in the battle with Jacob. The inspiration of the winter territory came from Shura's power of destruction. Freezing and ending were the essence of this territory. The most important reason why he could successfully cast and suppress the crystal territory was that he used the pressure of the crystal territory to double the outburst of the demigod's soul power. Under some kind of accidental coincidence, the winter territory actually perfectly integrated a trace of the demigod level soul law. So far, the 4 territories could be said to have finally come to fruition. With the absorption of the demigod's soul, some remnant consciousness fragments were also absorbed. He couldn't think about it in detail during the previous battle, but now he could check it slowly. In these fragments of consciousness, Chenrei gained a lot of valuable memories. It turned out that the so-called trial illusion turned out to be a territory kingdom, but it was incomplete. It was left by the owner of this soul when he was alive. Everything in the territory kingdom could be said to be a real dream. The gains of realization and power could also be retained. It was similar to the training ground of the super system. The difference was that once the mission failed, he would really die under the rule power. Although the offensive and defensive sides seen in the trial were simulated through the power of the territory kingdom, they were not fictitious. The name of the crystal demonic beast was Crystal Leopard, and the name of the giant crystal beast was Crystal Dragon. Coincidence? The name of the giant mecha was the Construct Puppet. Including the lamp spirits, they were all products created by the ancient alchemy civilization. As for the enemies in the karst cave, the little monster was called the Crevice Demon, the Longhorn Demon was called the Violent Demon, the Flame Woman was called the Flame Witch, the Great Sword Monster was called the Abyss Lord, and the mother that produced the monster was called the Mother's Nest. These terrifying monsters were collectively called the Abyss Clan. In the memory fragment, there was a scene where countless abyssal monsters crazily attacked a castle of an alchemy civilization. Defensive weapons like magic crystal cannons, magic construct puppets, and crystal dragons were unable to stop the overwhelming number of enemies. The originally indestructible castle was gradually drowned by the tide of abyssal monsters. This was just a fragment of the world of alchemy civilization destroyed by the abyss monsters. The owner of the soul that Chenrei absorbed used the last power to control the damaged castle that had exhausted its energy to sink into the ground before the civilization was destroyed. The body that was already in danger was annihilated because of this, and the soul fell into a long sleep. After many years, the damaged castle that could automatically absorb energy finally recovered a little energy. Some of the lamp spirits were resurrected. They used a kind of yuan mine underground to begin to accumulate energy, and they looked for a suitable inheritor, according to the order of the soul before falling asleep. He had to admit that the soul was very sad. He found a freak like Chenrei, but he failed to possess him and was devoured instead. Although little Chen was shot in the knee, he was still blessed after all. Not only did he get unexpected power, but he also completed Sakali's mission. What was even more surprising was that the memory fragments obtained also contained a lot of knowledge and experience of the ancient alchemy civilization, including pharmaceutics and mechanics. Although it was not very complete, most of it was now lost knowledge. For alchemists, it was more precious than any wealth. When he was excited, he saw a group of lamp spirits walking over carefully. Under the leadership of Zhen Sha, they folded their hands in front of their chest and knelt on one knee. Master. Being able to get the recognition of the lamp spirits, it seemed that this inheritance was really successful by accident. Chenrei inadvertently glanced at the plump chests of the lamp spirits, and he inexplicably thought of a certain absurd situation in the illusion. His heart was hot, and he quickly shook his head vigorously to get rid of the distracting thoughts. Let's go to the ruins. I promised Genie to resurrect her. Chapter 524. Dark Moon Estate, Moonlight Fortress. Imperial Capital Army Command Tent. Looking at the livid regent obsidian on the seat, neither the general nor the lord dared to speak easily. Last night, after capturing the undefended Moonlight Fortress, the new deputy commander of the coalition army, Pallor, led the capital's 3 elite legions and the Air Force, the Flying Cloud Legion, to pursue the defeated army and raid Town Daiko. However, the result of this raid was completely beyond everyone's expectations. Pallor was besieged by more than 500,000 undead in Town Daiko. The 1st Legion and the Flying Cloud Legion, which were pursuing the enemy, were attacked by the defeated army and the undead, and they were completely annihilated. At dawn, Commander Pallor led the 2nd Legion and the 3rd Legion, which were less than 30,000 soldiers, to break through the siege. The deputy commander of the Allied forces and the commander-in-chief of this raid, Pallor, was seriously injured and unconscious. 1st Legion Commander Yeffa and Deputy Legion Commander Carey were missing. The whereabouts of the commander of the Flying Cloud Legion, Rometty, was unknown. The commander of the 2nd Legion, Fritz, was killed, and the deputy commander, Toros, was killed. The 3rd Legion commander, Nukel, was lightly injured, and the Vice Legion commander, Lanji, was killed. The 3 demon overlords, Stiller, Barocco, and Stebble retreated in defeat with minor injuries. The whereabouts of the demon overlord-level royal family powerhouse, Pegasus, were unknown. Whereabouts unknown usually meant that it was a disaster. Such a heavy loss. This was not the cannon fodder of the feudal lords, but the true elite army of the imperial capital. Not only those demon emperor-level generals, but even the demon overlord-level Pegasus was killed. If the previous battle of the Moonlight Fortress gave Obsidian a loud slap in the face, then the battle of Town Daiko was a heavy punch that broke his teeth. This was a crushing defeat that could not be avoided. Originally, with the distance between Town Dick and the Moonlight Fortress, they could directly reinforce if they noticed that the situation was not right. However, the enemy obviously considered this and deliberately cut off the connection between the two places. The scouts or soldiers who asked for help were intercepted and killed without exception. It was not until Pallor broke out of the encirclement that they realized that it was impossible to save the situation by sending troops to support them. "Your Highness! The scouts reported that the undead army has withdrawn from Town Daiko, but..." "Just what?" Obsidian's face was horribly gloomy. "The armors and weapons left behind by the corpses were taken away by the enemy, and a considerable number of the corpses are missing." "Humph!" Obsidian slammed the table, and the table suddenly turned into powder. Everyone was silent. "Your Highness, the undead army took away weapons and corpses, indicating that they also suffered a lot in this ambush. They need to use corpses to replenish their army. Even a demon overlord-level magician needs considerable time to transform a large number of corpses into undead with the help of a special altar. There's no time to lose. I believe that we should be able to mobilize the army to pursue the undead. Even if we can't annihilate them, we should be able to restore morale." It was Gerent who spoke. Although he knew that Obsidian was angry at the moment, and it was not a good thing to speak first, the battle situation was ever-changing. The opportunity was fleeting, so he couldn't care so much. "Everyone understands the intention of the undead army to take away the weapons and corpses. You don't need to emphasize it." Obsidian snorted coldly. "The Dark Moon army is very cunning. If we pursue now, who can guarantee that we will not repeat Pallor's mistake?" Gerent argued. "Your Royal Highness, behind Town Daiko is the Leith Wilderness. The terrain is not suitable for ambush. We can first send an army to test the situation, and then the army will prepare to attack." Josh came out and spoke. "In the current situation, it is not advisable to advance rashly. The morale of our army cannot be damaged again, even if it is only a small loss. The reason for Pallor's failure is that he was ambushed by the Dark Moon while underestimating the enemy. According to the strength comparison, even if the opponent has the undead army, our troops and combat power still have the upper hand. I propose to occupy Town Daiko first, then slowly restore vitality and morale, and send scouts to inquire in many ways. After confirming the enemy's movements, we will determine the next specific action." Obsidian nodded slightly. Josh's proposal is more reliable, especially the sentence. Our army still has the upper hand. I like it very much. But okay. Gerent. Gerent was interrupted before he finished speaking. A cold light flashed in Obsidian's slightly narrowed eyes. At present, Paler is seriously injured and unconscious, so you will retake the position of Deputy Commander. The current task is to occupy Town Daiko and try to stabilize the army's morale. Understand? Gerent didn't say anything more. He just gave a military salute. Yes, Your Royal Highness. After the meeting, Gerent was ordered to reward the soldiers and stabilize the morale. When he came to the military supply office, he happened to meet Josh, who was in charge of logistics. General, please wait a moment. The military supplies will be ready in about an hour. Gerent nodded slightly, and he suddenly said, Sir Josh, I really don't agree with the proposal you put forward today. At this time, blindly seeking stability will only give the Dark Moon more breathing time. Why don't we go and persuade Royal Highness Obsidian together? Josh was taken aback. He ordered his men to retreat and said, General, some words may not be appropriate, but I still want to say it. When Seymour's Nether Hydra Legion was dispatched in the Red Spirit Estate, the general obviously had the opposite opinion with the Regent. In the end, the Nether Hydra Legion sent by the Regent was completely annihilated. Subsequently, when we attacked the Moonlight Fortress, our army encountered stubborn resistance and suffered a lot of losses. We failed to achieve success in one fell swoop as the Regent ordered. The real reason is that the Dark Moon showed strength far beyond our expectations. Even the Regent sent 2 air legions, but they still failed to take down the fortress. This was not a mistake in the general's command, but the Regent felt that his face had been damaged, so he still removed the general's deputy commander position for poor command. Then Paler took down the undefended Moonlight Fortress. When the Regent ordered to pursue the defeated Dark Moon army, the general stopped him again, but the Regent didn't listen, resulting in a crushing defeat. Now that the Regent obviously has the intention to temporarily rest and reorganize the army, the general once again objected and proposed to pursue the enemy. If the general's judgment fails and the morale is even lower, then it is fine. If the general's strategy succeeds and we win, then it is equivalent to slapping the Regent's face in front of everyone. General, do you understand what I mean? Gerent stared at Josh for a moment, and he finally sighed. I understand Sir's meaning. General is not a stupid person. You should be able to guess the reason why the Regent Royal Highness clearly hates you, but he reappointed you as the deputy commander at this time. This lost and regained deputy commander is not a pleasant job. The next battle with the Dark Moon will be more difficult. If Royal Highness Obsidian wins, he will be a scapegoat if he loses. Gerent smiled bitterly and shook his head. I'm just a soldier in military affairs. I want to win the final victory of the war, that's all. There is no independent military or political. Josh also sighed. Forget it, I'm too talkative. I sincerely hope that the general will think more about everything and try to keep a useful body. The Empire needs a pillar like the general. Gerent nodded solemnly. Understood, I will keep these words in mind. Thank you, Sir Josh, for your guidance and friendship. I didn't say anything nonsense today. I'm just discussing the supply of supplies with the general. As he spoke, Josh and Gerent looked at each other and smiled. Watching Gerent leave the tent, a strange smile appeared on Josh's face. Although these words were not enough to sow discord, they had effectively buried a nail in Gerent's heart, causing him to have more concerns. In any case, the capital army temporarily rested and reorganized. The purpose of delaying time for the Dark Moon had been achieved. Under the control of the master-servant contract and poison, Josh was now firmly tied to the Dark Moon's ship. For the sake of his life and power, he had to pull down the old master, Obsidian, at all costs. At present, he was only secretly fanning a small flame. When the time came, as the most important insider, he would become the key figure in determining the entire war. Shenrui, who was far away in the White Feather Estate, did not know these little tricks of Josh. Since he devoured the power of the demigod's soul, especially in the Winter Territory, he still retained a trace of soul breath, so he successfully obtained the approval of the ruins. He entered the ruins with a group of lamp spirits. The ruins were actually a broken castle of the alchemy civilization. Due to the serious damage in the war, coupled with the age and lack of energy, most things were no longer usable. In the storage secret vault, Chunrei found the heart lamps of the lamp spirits. There were thousands of them, but many of them had been broken and lost their effectiveness. According to the level of power of the lamp spirits, the heart lamps were divided into gold, silver, and iron from high to low. The first word of the name was also gold, white, and black. Genie's heart lamp was gold. There were nearly 100 gold heart lamps, and 30 of them were intact. This would be a powerful help. Although the indestructible body of the lamp spirits was powerful, the resurrection was not endless. The number of resurrection of the golden lamp was 4 times, the silver lamp could resurrect 3 times, and the iron lamp could resurrect 2 times. The heart lamp that exceeded the number of resurrections would break and lose its effectiveness unless it was repaired at a very high price. Chunrei learned from the acquired memory that the heart lamp could not only be repaired, but it could also be upgraded through special materials and energy transformation. Each level of advancement was quite difficult. The higher the level, the more difficult it was. If the advancement failed, then the level of the heart lamp would drop by 1 level. The golden lamp would drop to the silver lamp would drop to the iron lamp. If the advancement failed, the iron lamp would directly break and fail. Generally speaking, the level of the golden heart lamp was already the limit. In the alchemy civilization, there were alchemists who used a secret recipe to transform the dark red heart lamp beyond the limit. Unfortunately, the success rate was extremely low, and it would be directly scrapped if it failed. Chunrei had experienced the illusion of the territory kingdom. He understood that these lamp spirits were female slaves who completely obeyed him. They were not only powerful soldiers on the battlefield but also a stunner in bed. However, the illusion was an illusion. In reality, he didn't dare to have crooked thoughts. Except for this trial, the super system was also unusable when facing the demigod in the Rainbow Valley. In Chunrei's situation, if it weren't for the 4 major territories that he had newly realized, the failure of the super system was equivalent to losing all his combat power, which was inferior to ordinary powerhouses of the same level. Now that Chunrei had S-level spirit power, he could sense more things more clearly. He remembered that he could feel the super system in the trial, but he couldn't use skills. Then, he woke up from the illusion and could use the super system again. This should not be the problem of the super system itself, but his own problem. Chunrei faintly realized that his understanding of the super system seemed to have entered a certain misunderstanding. This realization meant that he would change to a new perspective and comprehend more mysteries of the super system. It was a pity that the Dark Moon's war was urgent now, and he had to seize every second. He didn't have enough time to study slowly. He must continue the plan on the White Feather Estate immediately. Although the battle caused a lot of the main mine cave of the Lobe mine to collapse, under the protection of the dragon inscription, the main body of the mine cave was still intact. Many of the surviving miners had escaped. This time, Sakali's mission was considered to be successfully completed. He needed to return to the White Feather City immediately to report. Chunrei thought carefully for a while, and he ordered some of the lamp spirits to stay in the ruins to resurrect those intact heart lamps. The rest of the lamp spirits disguised themselves, left the swamp, and went to the nearby town Rani where the dark demon's spy was. This spy would take the lamp spirits to a certain stronghold of the dark demon in the White Feather City to wait for orders. As for the Medusa tribe, after witnessing the battle between Chunrei and Jacob, they had completely surrendered to this powerful master. Chunrei's order to them was to be ready to dispatch at any time. After arranging all this, Chunrei opened the Star Gate and returned to the White Feather City in an instant. Initially, Sakali gave him 10 days, and now he had completed the mission ahead of schedule. He believed that it was time to reveal one of Sakali's trump cards. Chapter 525. Chunrei came to the White Feather City Arena fan shop and found the owner, Tracy. Generally speaking, the lich was thin and sinister, but the lich in front of him was very different. He looked chubby with a simple and honest smile on his face, which made it difficult for people to have a bad impression. Chenrui didn't think that this lich was a simple and honest character, otherwise, he would not be entrusted with such an important task by Sikali. When Chenrui handed the ring given by Sikali to Tracy, the lich's eyes flashed, and his chubby face smiled more flatteringly. He claimed to invite Chenrui to the VIP room to discuss the big business of bulk orders. Chenrui followed the lich to the VIP room. Tracy showed a respectful expression, opened a secret door, and asked him to wait in the secret room. About an hour later, Sikali, who was disguised, appeared in the secret room. "Sir Fako, my friend, you are simply amazing." Sikali's expression looked quite surprised. "I just received a magic message from Town Rani. You actually solved that big problem so quickly." Sikali was indeed surprised. After receiving Tracy's report, he immediately sent someone to contact the mining office in Town Rani. Sure enough, he got the corresponding news. According to the witnesses, who were the surviving miners, an unknown powerhouse suddenly appeared underground and had a fierce battle with the terrifying powerhouse who occupied the mine. In the end, the latter was defeated and fled far away. Currently, the mining office was rearranging the work related to resuming mining. Others didn't know the degree of danger in the Lobe mining area, but Sikali was clear. This mining area was one of the important resources of the White Feather Estate. After hearing that there was a problem, in order to show his importance, he led a team to investigate in person, but he was forced back by a terrifying breath. According to Sikali's judgment, this breath was extremely powerful. It was definitely at the demon overlord level, and it might even not be an ordinary demon overlord. It was far from what he could resist. This time, he deliberately let Fako go to solve it. He also wanted to see the power behind this person. He didn't expect the problem to be solved in such a short time. It was really unexpected. For a while, Sikali began to really pay attention to this mysterious Fako. For him, who was already in imminent danger, this might be a real life-saving straw. If he didn't grab hold of it, then his tragic ending would be unchangeable. Chenrui smiled. "I think you've already gotten the proof you want." Sikali knew that the other party was referring to the proven ability statement last time, and he immediately nodded. "Of course, not only that, sir's proof far exceeds my expectations. I admire you. You flatter me. The stronger the partner, the better." Sikali nodded appreciatively. He seemed to have made up his mind and said, "Since this is the case, I won't beat around the bush. I have one of the most important things for Sir to do. I want a person, and I want him alive. I also want something from this person." Chenrui did not disapprove of the simplicity of the request at all. Instead, he showed a solemn expression. "I believe this person and that thing must be extraordinary for the Count to consider it as the most important thing. This is different from the proof of the mining area. It is already a formal transaction between us. What I want to remind Sir is the relationship between pay and return. If the person you want is the Demon Realm's top powerhouse, Raisin the Great, then even if I can achieve it, Sir can't afford this price." Chenrui's rigorous attitude made Sikali more satisfied. "Don't worry, I can definitely pay the price for the person I want. There is also an additional condition. I can provide information about this person and that thing, but Sir can't ask me the inside story of this matter. You just need to complete the mission." "Of course." Chenrui smiled and said, "What I care most about is, what reward can Sir pay?" Sikali's expression was extremely firm. "As long as it is within my ability as the White Feather Lord, anything is fine. Even my only sister, Palando, is no exception." "Very good." Chenrui's eyes narrowed, and his smile was even stronger. Sikali saw it in his eyes, and he secretly thought that he had succeeded in his plan. He didn't know that this person had already seen through the secret between him and Palando. The last sentence of deliberate determination had a self-defeating effect instead. "My conditions are definitely within Sir's ability. As for what the specific conditions are, let's wait until the person and thing are in hand." Chinray said faintly. Now I need to know all the information about the target. No matter who this person is, I will satisfy, sir. What needs to be explained in advance is that my force is very powerful. Power is often equated with needs. Sir must be mentally prepared by then. Needs? It is nothing more than wealth, relying on forces, coups, and so on. As long as I can save my life and eradicate the biggest enemy, the rest can be considered in the long run. Sikali agreed with a firm face, and he took out the space ring that Chinray had previously given Tracy. As usual, the information is in this ring. Chinray took the ring, put it in his inner pocket, and stood up. This will be a good start for my long-term cooperation with Sir. I have proven to Sir my strength to solve difficult problems before this, so there is no need to boast. I just want to say that I will never let Sir down. Sikali's eyes flashed with a strange expression. Very good. Then I will wait for Sir's good news as I did last time. After leaving the secret room of the fan shop, Chinray returned to the White Armor Hotel, rearranged the magic circle to monitor Sikali, and then opened the space ring. There was a piece of information in the space ring that said that the person to be dealt with was the most proficient in shape-shifting. He once pretended to be the Lord, and he also had a legendary grade item called the Wheel of Hull. This commission was not only to capture this person alive, but also to get the Wheel of Hull. Chinray sneered on his face. An enemy who pretended to be the Lord? The legendary grade Wheel of Hull? It was fine if it was someone who didn't know, but Chinray was clear about the relationship between the Wheel of Hera and Sikali, including this Sir Lord, who could only be regarded as a substitute. It was clearly a counterfeit that wanted to replace the original. However, what Chinray cared about was not this, but the relevant information of the original. According to the information in the ring, the original Sikali was training in a secret place in town Massimo. This person's strength had surpassed the Demon Emperor level, and the Wheel of Hull was actually a huge separable item. The original Sikali had been using this item to absorb power. At this time, in the monitoring magic, it could be seen that Sikali walked briskly into the room of the Lord's mansion. His depressed mood seemed to have relaxed a lot. He grabbed the maid on the side and put his hand into her dress. The rough action made the maid show a painful look, but she did not dare to resist. Sikali grabbed the maid's hair. As he was about to abuse her, suddenly there were footsteps outside, and Palando walked into the room. The scene in front of her made Palando's gaze become colder. Sikali slowly let go of the maid, and the maid hurriedly covered her torn clothes. She was slapped by Palando and fell to the ground. She covered her face and hurriedly crawled out. Palando ignored the maid, walked over and reached out to grab Sikali's face, but she was pushed on the table by Sikali. Sikali lifted her skirt and slapped her snow-white buttocks hard, tightening the thong that was not enough to cover her body, and then, it finally became a lascivious erotic movie. Chinray was not interested in watching any more, so he turned off the monitoring magic circle. This Sikali's clone was lecherous, violent, and cunning. His strength was a weakness. If it really didn't work, he could sacrifice a god-eating mask slot to control him. It was just that it was useless to control this clone at the moment. No matter what the final decision was, the original Sikali must be dealt with first. While thinking, Chinray heard the sound of approaching footsteps in the distance. They were coming toward this room. It seemed to be two people. His current spirit power had reached the level of the demon overlord, and his perception ability was far from comparable to before. He could already sense that one of the two approaching people had extraordinary strength. Just in case, Chinray immediately removed the traces of the magic circle. Soon, there was a knock on the door. Chinray opened the door calmly and saw the hotel waiter with a stranger outside the door. The waiter saluted and said, "Sir Faco, this is the messenger sent by Sir Lord." Chinray glanced at the messenger and was slightly startled, then he showed a meaningful smile. "Please come in." The messenger walked in, and the waiter closed the door and left. After sensing that the waiter had gone far, the messenger saluted. "Greetings, Sir Faco." Chinray didn't talk. He just stared at the messenger quietly, and slowly released his soul power secretly. It was equivalent to the demon overlord level spirit oppression that enveloped the messenger. The messenger seemed to be unable to bear this kind of pressure. His body began to tremble violently, and he exclaimed, "Sir, don't misunderstand. I'm sent by Sir Lord." Chinray's awe-inspiring voice sounded. "Before we start our conversation, I will give you a piece of advice first. Don't act rashly. Otherwise, even if you have the strength of the peak stage of the Demon Emperor, you will be annihilated in an instant." The messenger's expression changed. He seemed to be thinking quickly, and the trembling of his body gradually stopped. He said calmly, "I'm being presumptuous, Sir Faco." As soon as he finished speaking, the spirit coercion suddenly disappeared. Chinray was already sitting on the sofa. He reached out and gestured, "Please sit down." The messenger bowed slightly and sat down opposite. "What should I call you?" Chinray's tone seemed intriguing. "Sir Lord? Or should I say, another Sir Lord?" The messenger's expression changed drastically. He seemed to be about to stand up, but he held back and did not move. Initially, when his strength was exposed, his surprise was still a bit pretentious, but now he was really shocked. In the analytical eyes, the messenger's race was the Lucifer royal family. His true strength was A+. The value was exactly the same as the peak stage of the demon empress Sakali who visited the Dark Moon. Coupled with that familiar feeling, Chinray was sure that the person in front of him was another Lord. This person actually came to find Faco in person, which aroused his interest. "Sir Faco, did that person tell you these inside stories in the fan shop?" When Chinray heard the words, fan shop, he was slightly stunned. He shook his head and said, "That person just entrusted me with a mission to deal with an enemy who can transform and obtain a legendary grade item called the Wheel of Hull. He didn't say anything else." Hearing the words, transformation, and Wheel of Hull, a trace of ridicule flashed in the messenger's eyes. Chinray said again, "I actually knew the so-called inside story a long time ago. As a powerful force, it would be strange if I don't have some confidential information on hand, isn't it, Sir Lord?" The messenger's face did not change, but he sighed. "I was really rude this time. Please forgive me, sir. Since Sir is a sensible person, I won't play tricks. In fact, I have been in contact with Sir's force for a long time, but it's not Sir's line." Chinray's heart moved. Since they met, he had been suppressing this peak stage of the demon emperor Sakali in terms of momentum. Whether it was the spiritual coercion or the shocking inside story that was pointed out verbally, he always held the initiative, making the other party be restrained everywhere. Now that Sakali said this, he had the intention of easing the passive situation, but Chinray heard additional clues. "He is related to the force of Faco." "What is the force behind Faco? Dark Moon?" "No. Then the force that Sakali thinks." "Oh?" Chinray had a spurious expression. "The force I belong to is very huge. It is divided into several factions. There are royal nobles, giant dragons, and some ruined royal families and so on. I'm a little confused. I don't know which faction Sir Lord is talking about." When Sakali heard this, he had no doubt in his heart. He smiled bitterly. "Let's not beat around the bush. Now the lobe mine has returned to its normal state. The line that I contacted was also cut off by Sir. I'm really ashamed." Chinray's heart was clear. Sakali of the peak stage of the Demon Emperor really colluded with Bloodfall, and he even connected with Jacob. No wonder compared with Sakali of the early stage of the Demon Emperor, this person seems to be much calmer. It turns out that he has a backup plan. He wants to use the power of Bloodfall to deal with the real Sakali. Now that Jacob had escaped, it would definitely be impossible to recontact him in a short time. Sakali naturally did not know who defeated the Crystal Dragon. He must take advantage of this to solve the problem of the White Feather Estate as soon as possible. I originally knew that Sir came to the White Feather Estate, but I hadn't confirmed Sir's identity at that time, and I didn't know Sir's strength. Sekali said euphemistically. I don't know if Sir wants a real collaborator? A real collaborator? Chunrui had already understood the other party's intention. Once the clone used Fako to eliminate the real Sekali, the next one to deal with would definitely be this peak stage of the Demon Emperor clone. Therefore, he must strike first to gain the most critical help of Fako. I came with the greatest sincerity, unlike that person who has other intentions. Sekali stood up and bowed solemnly. I can accept all the conditions of Sir. After seeing through the other party's mentality, Chunrui seemed even more unhurried. I want to ask a question first. If I killed the real Sekali somewhere or destroy the Wheel of Hera, will it affect your life? Even though Sekali was scheming, he couldn't help but be shocked. Wheel of Hera. Not the Wheel of Hull. The real Sekali. This is definitely not something that the clone will reveal. I didn't expect Fako to actually master the biggest secret of the White Feather Estate. Chapter 526. The expression on Sekali's face changed rapidly, and he finally recovered. Since the other party had already seen through the biggest secret, telling the truth was the best choice. If the Wheel of Hera is destroyed, all the accumulated faith power will dissipate. The real body and clone will be severely damaged at the same time, but they will not die. It's just that if the real body is killed directly, our clones will also die unless the clone can devour the soul of the real body and become the real body. The Wheel of Hera was an ancient artifact. Tetanus did not know it in detail. Now listening to Sekali's explanation, Chunrui knew that this was the case. The clone can devour the soul of the real body? The premise is that he loses the ability to resist. Sekali smiled bitterly. His strength is far better than us. He has a group of powerful, fearless warriors under him, and he also has the Wheel of Hera in his hand. How can we have this chance? Chunrui understood the entrustment of Sekali at the early stage of the Demon Emperor. That guy's ambition is not only to get freedom and save his life, but he also wants to get the Wheel of Hera and become the second Sekali. Chunrui's mind turned quickly, and he asked, So tell me, what do you want? Live. And the sole control of this estate. Sekali was also thinking quickly in his heart. If I can get more, of course I will not refuse. Chunrui nodded slightly. This guy is also ambitious, but he is much more cautious. Facing the current situation, he did not hesitate to hand over his bottom line. You are more sincere than that guy. Chunrui's tone became cautious. So I can tell you that we need a lord who controls the White Feather Estate. Under normal circumstances, we will not interfere in his affairs, but when necessary, we must obey orders and contribute our greatest strength. So, this lord's loyalty to us is 100%, understand? Sekali's eyes flashed. 100% loyalty? Complete surrender? I can provide all the resources of the estate to the Bloodfall, even the troops, but it is a bit beyond my psychological price to completely hand over my personal fate to be controlled by others. Seeing Sekali's hesitation, Chunrui added faintly, There is an old saying in the demon realm that there is no such thing as reaping without sowing. Gains and costs were often equal. Don't forget, with the current situation, I have a lot more choices than you. Sekali was shocked. The last sentence was the key point. If he refused now, then after the other party dealt with the real body, he could also support another submissive to take the position. It could be the licentious clone, another stranger, or even the real body. No matter who it was, he would not be able to survive. Fako can indeed choose more than him, and he can choose. Sekali was silent. Chunrui did not force him anymore. He just leaned comfortably on the sofa and played with the space ring in his hand calmly. In fact, it was equivalent to an invisible pressure. Although he was very worried about the Dark Moon's war, in this scene, it was Sekali who was anxious, not Fako. I am now restricted by the Wheel of Hera, so I can't sign a master-servant contract. If you can capture the real body and let me devour his soul, I am willing to surrender. Sekali hesitated for a while. As for the Wheel of Hera, my bottom line is to destroy it. You are really a smart person and very contented. At least in my opinion, you are more sincere than the guy who is playing a sadistic game with Palando now. Chenrui knew that the other party was cunning and changeable. It was impossible to directly bow down to him with a few words. He must speak with facts. As the saying goes, don't give up until you see the Yellow River. As long as I control Sakali's real body by then, everything will be easy. As he said, I can choose more than one target. When Sakali heard the words, Palando, and sadistic game, he was secretly horrified. He felt that all his secrets were seen through by the other party. Since entering this room, he had been feeling suppressed everywhere. This Fako in front of him far exceeded his expectations in both strength and wisdom. It seemed that it was not impossible to achieve his biggest wish. Okay, now tell me everything you know about the real Sakali. 3 days later, Chenrui's figure appeared in the abandoned site of Old Town Massimo, the easternmost part of the White Feather Estate. Town Massimo was once a very prosperous town. 5 years ago, a group of ferocious bandits appeared. They wore hideous masks and relied on their powerful demonic beast mounts to come and go like the wind. They often caused massacres and looting in the town Massimo area. The townspeople were killed and injured in great numbers. They were miserable and miserable. When Lord Sakali heard the news, he was furious. He personally led the army to annihilate more than 3,000 bandits, and their heads piled up into a hill. However, the bandits' torment at that time also caused serious damage to the living environment of Town Massimo, and the situation was not as good as before. Sakali managed to build a new town to the west of Town Massimo, and let the residents move to the new town to start a stable life again. The new town was called New Massimo, and the abandoned original site was called Old Massimo. According to Sakali, who was at the peak stage of the Demon Emperor, the town Massimo horse bandits tragedy was actually directed by Sakali himself. The cause was that several hunters in the town discovered a secret in the nearby barren mountain by chance. In order to silence them, Sakali sent his guards to pretend to be horse bandits to kill all the hunters and all related family and friends who might leak the secret. He also sent people to sneak into the town to investigate until it was confirmed that the secret had not been leaked. As for those who were beheaded, they were also innocent people who had nothing to do with the real horse bandits. Anyway, with Sakali's reputation, as long as a few masks used by horse bandits were thrown near the heads, the people would not doubt it. After Sakali solved the trouble of Town Massimo, he moved his office from the White Feather City to Old Town Massimo. He only issued some instructions behind the scenes. The clones who had been used as substitutes had the opportunity to come to the front stage. The truth of Town Massimo strengthened Chenrui's determination to deal with Sakali. Such a tyrannical and ferocious lord who had such a reputation in the entire White Feather Estate must have used many despicable means similar to the Town Massimo incident to deceive the people. In fact, Sakali's real purpose of vigorously developing the estate and pretending to be kind to the people was only for the faith power of the Wheel of Hera. Whether it was the peak stage of the Demon Emperor or the early stage of the Demon Emperor, Sakali's clone knew very little about the real secret of Town Massimo. Judging from the real Sakali's abandonment of the White Feather City to stay here, I'm afraid it's not as simple as using the Wheel of Hera to train. Town Massimo relied on the barren mountain. There were many terrifying legends. Since it was abandoned, there was basically no one there. Chenrui, who was wearing a gray cloak to cover his true face, wandered around the abandoned site for a long time. He did not find any clues, so he walked toward the barren mountain. The barren mountain was the collective name for a large area of undeveloped barren mountains in the extreme east of the White Feather Estate. The area was extremely vast. The mountains here were dangerous and barren. There were also terrifying demonic beasts in the depths of the forest. According to the information provided by the two clones, Chenrui explored in a rocky mountain range in the depths of the barren mountain. He finally found a cave covered with protective magic circles nearby. It should be the entrance to Sakali's base. Unfortunately, that was all the information. Even the two clones had no further information. They didn't know what secrets there were in this base. For Chenrui, The magic circles in the cave area were not difficult to crack, but it took some effort to not alarm the people inside. After passing through the magic circles in the cave, Chenrei entered the cave smoothly. With the powerful spirit power of the demon overlord, he carefully avoided countless traps along the way. This cave was somewhat similar to the Dark Demon headquarters in the Dark Moon City. The mysteries were all underground. The deeper he went, the wider the space. There were also magic lights illuminating along the way. Patrolling guards had begun to appear in front, and the light of the magic lights was getting brighter and brighter, but there were fewer and fewer hiding places. Fortunately, the strength of these guards was not very strong. They were only at the higher demon level. Chenrei carefully avoided them and continued to sneak forward. With the skills of camouflage and breath holding, Chenrei constantly changed his figure to look for the whereabouts of Sakali's real body. This underground world was very large. It seemed to have hollowed out the mountainside of the entire mountain range. The scale of the project was far greater than the headquarters of the Dark Demon. Finally, Chenrei found a heavily guarded and brightly lit hall. With his perception, he could detect the unusual power fluctuations surging out of it. Chenrei observed patiently for a while, and he finally chose a corner to attack. He killed the last one of the patrolling guards. While putting the corpse into the storage warehouse, he quickly transformed into the guard's appearance. After turning a corner, the team continued to move forward, unaware that the last dark elf had changed into another person. Finally, the team of guards passed by the hall. Chenrei quickly glanced over. From a distance, he saw that the space in the hall was extremely huge. It was almost equivalent to the area of a half-track field. There were dozens of giant pillars that seemed to be arranged according to a special pattern. There was a person sitting on the ground in the innermost area. With his eyesight, he could see that this person looked exactly like Sakali. He was resting with his eyes closed. Unfortunately, due to the distance, analytical eyes could not analyze the specific strength of this person. He could only faintly detect through the soul perception that this Sakali was much stronger than the two he had encountered before. It was likely to be the real Sakali. Chenrei was not in a hurry to make a move. He followed the team to patrol a few laps. Finally, he chose an opportunity to sneak in silently when he passed by the entrance of the hall. He had used the breath-holding technique to suppress his breath to the lowest point. With his S+ level spirit power, even if Sakali had reached the demon overlord level, he could not detect his existence. At this moment, Chenrei suddenly had an ominous omen. He felt that there were many stronger breaths slowly surrounding the hall. Chenrei's mind turned quickly, and he cautiously retreated toward the hall. He saw Sakali's eyes slowly open, and he said, "Since you are here, why do you want to leave again?" At this time, there were more and more breaths coming from outside, surrounding the entire hall. How could Chenrei not know that he was ambushed? But he did not panic. He simply strolled out and said in a deep voice, "I can't leave anyway. Before I die, can you satisfy my curiosity, Sir Lord?" Sakali smiled proudly. Although he was just sitting, he gave people a feeling that he needed to look up. "I know what you want to ask. Your stealth skill and transformation skill are very good. Unfortunately, this hall is not an ordinary place. As soon as you came in, I noticed that those pillars are actually part of the Wheel of Hera. By the way, a guy told you that the name is the Wheel of Hull." The last sentence made Chenrei's pupils shrink suddenly. It turns out that Sakali knows the words and deeds of the clone like the back of his hand. He even knows such a small detail. Then this is clearly a trap set up early to welcome me. Facing the bad situation, Chenrei thought quickly. Sakali's clone of the early stage of the Demon Emperor is about to be devoured by the real body. His life is at stake, so he should not betray me, the last life-saving straw. As the saying goes, the teeth will be interdependent. Before I deal with the real body, the clone of the peak stage of the Demon Emperor will not do this either. So who leaked the news? Very confused, right? Sakali smiled gently. Actually, the answer is very simple. I have a good sister. That stupid guy thought he controlled her body and mind, so he got a lot of unknown inside information. In fact, that idiot is just a toy of hers. Let me tell you a secret. I, her brother, am her real master. Master? This term reminded Shinrei of another person, an enemy he hated to the bone. In an instant, coldness surged in his eyes, and Sakali's smiling face became even more disgusting. You already know so much, so you should understand what will happen to you. Sakali showed a little regret. I wanted to catch a big fish, but I didn't expect it to be just a small demon emperor, but it's barely okay to sacrifice him. At this time, a large group of people outside the hall had already poured in, led by 2 demon emperor leaders. The strength of those guards was also quite extraordinary. All of them were wearing heavy armor and thick shields, and they were wearing hideous masks on their faces. The most conspicuous was a team of about 200 magicians. Although the number of these magicians was not very large, the lowest strength had reached the Demon King level. This level of combat power was no less than an Empire-level magician legion. Sakali's smile was more confident. I know you are the Blood Falls killer, so I will not accept any tricks like surrendering. You only have a dead end. If you surrender, I can still give you a quick death. Shinrei's entire person suddenly cooled down, and the chill in his eyes had turned into a burst of cold, murderous intention. These are the real horse bandits who did evil in town Massimo back then. I believe they have played similar roles in many other places. This emotion surprised Sakali slightly. So what if it is? At this time, do you still have the extra energy to ask these boring questions? It's useless to delay time. Just accept your death obediently. Shinrei smiled angrily, and his murderous aura burst out. Yes, accept your death obediently. But it's you who will die. Chapter 527. As soon as Shinrei's words came out, although the people around him were well trained, they didn't make a sound, but their eyes showed mockery at the same time. This person is already a piece of meat on the chopping board, yet he still dares to boast so shamelessly. Those who appeared here were the most elite fearless warriors under Sakali's command. They had special magic inscriptions and were good at combining offense and defense. Even a demon overlord could be restrained or even restrained, let alone this guy in front of him who was just a demon emperor. As Master Sakali said, he originally wanted to catch a big fish, but a small shrimp came. Moreover, it was a shrimp that didn't know life and death. If this is a dense forest or wilderness, this shrimp may still be lucky to escape, but in this almost closed hall, there is only a dead end. Master should not need to do it himself. In this hall where there was no escape, Shinrei alone faced at least thousands of fierce enemies. These were not small fries, but the real power accumulated by Sakali over the years. Not only that, there was also a mysterious enemy behind him who was eyeing him covetously. Although the situation was not good, the surging fighting intent and killing intent in Shinrei's heart did not weaken. Instead, it became more turbulent, and his aura skyrocketed. Regardless of life or death, Sakali said faintly. He still sat cross-legged and did not intend to do it himself. The heavy shield warriors put up the huge shields in their hands, and the magic imprints on the shields began to flash with a pale yellow light as if they had united into an indestructible whole. The fearless warriors had strong confidence that even if the demon emperor in front of them was a powerhouse of the peak state, he could not break this defensive formation with a full blow. What about Demon Overlord? Can Demon Overlord do it? There were waves of strong magic fluctuations in the magician team, and various colors of flames began to shine. However, these flames were all covered by a kind of radiance. That kind of star-like brilliance did not seem to belong to this originally ugly and dark underground, but since it appeared, it would sweep away the darkness in every corner, even if it was only for a moment. Shinrei used the Royal Star transformation as soon as he came up, not only because he attached importance to the enemy, but also because he had the intention to kill. In the past, these men of sacrifice had pretended to be horse bandits, and the crimes they had committed in the town of Massimo were too numerous to be recorded. They had burned, killed, raped, and committed all sorts of crimes. Their methods were extremely cruel, and no one, from the elderly to the children, was spared. Just the fact that every horse gangster had a wine vessel made of a toddler's head had shocked the entire White Feather estate. In this kind of gravitational field, their super defensive armor and giant shields had instead become fatal burdens. All of them were swaying left and right, unable to move. Some of them were even heavily injured by the giant shields and armor. Gravity. Chenrui's gravity was obtained through the Earth Elemental King Mor's element blessing, which was equivalent to a kind of talent power. Unfortunately, he was not proficient in magic, so the power of the gravity he cast was not as good as the Demon Emperor Powerhouse, who was proficient in magic. The S+ level spirit power could be described as a pearl covered with dust. If it was Rala who cast it, then no matter how high the quality of these people in front of him was, there would be a large number of casualties. The hall suddenly shone brightly, and the space seemed to have increased several times. Those pillars began to become transparent, and a strange power surged out. The effect of gravity was quickly offset by this power. The source of the power was Sikali. The breath exuded from his body made Chenrui feel familiar. It is the power of faith. It turns out that the Wheel of Hera is not those pillars, but the entire hall. Although the disorderly armored warriors could not restore their defensive formation for a while, the two Demon Emperor leaders who were least affected by the gravity had jointly opened their territory power to block in front of the magicians, forming a powerful protective barrier. The magicians behind began to prepare to attack again. If it was before the Royal Star Transformation, the two Demon Emperors had already rushed up, but after the Royal Star Transformation, the aura exuded by Chenrui had already made the two Demon Emperors instinctively feel fear, so their first reaction was to protect the magicians. As long as these magicians launched the strongest joint attack with the secret method, even if the opponent had reached the Demon Overlord, they would not dare to take it lightly. As long as the enemy was restrained by magic, they could take advantage of the situation to launch an effective attack. At least, diverting the opponent's attention could create opportunities for the master. When Chenrui saw this posture, he already knew in his heart. A mask suddenly appeared on his face. This mask was very thin, almost equivalent to skin. Under the cover of the visor, it could not be seen from the outside. Devour! In an instant, all the magic power and spirit power near the hall rushed to Chenrui like a tide. To be precise, it rushed to the mask. It was completely drained in the blink of an eye. The magician's magic that was ready to be launched was like an inflated balloon that had its air outlet loosened. It deflated instantly. One of the two Demon Emperor leaders was a magician. The original joint territory protection was perfect, but under the influence of this terrifying devour power, it collapsed instantly. Sikali, who had been waiting for the opportunity to attack, was shocked again. This devour power is equivalent to the nemesis of the magicians. Could it be the talent of the old rival of the Lucifer royal family? No. I'm afraid this kind of devour strength is not something that can be achieved by ordinary talents. While he was distracted, Chenrui's figure instantly passed through the collapsed defense territory and appeared in the densest location of the fearless warriors. The fearless warriors suddenly felt that the surrounding environment had changed as if they were in the stars, and their power began to decline and decay rapidly. Immediately afterward, there was a violent shout. True! Destructive aura blow! A high-speed half-moon light appeared on all the fearless warriors in a large circle nearby. This fast-moving half-moon was like the dance of the Grim Reaper. Their lives and souls were cut and split under this dance. Even the warriors wearing heavy armor could not withstand this kind of soul-penetrating blade chi. On the surface, the armor of those armored warriors was only twisted and shattered, and their bodies were not fatally damaged. In fact, their souls had been completely annihilated under this blow. As for the magicians who had lost their magic power, they were turned into countless pieces without any resistance. In an instant, at least hundreds of fearless warriors were killed in this blow within a radius of 60 meters nearby. The Demon Emperor of the magician was seriously injured and dying, and the other Demon Emperor was also seriously injured. The fearless warriors were all shocked. They initially thought that with this lineup, they would at least hinder the opponent, but they didn't expect them to be so vulnerable. Sekali was shocked and angry. This enemy whom he had underestimated at the beginning had lost more than half of the elite fearless warriors that he had painstakingly trained in just a few breaths from the actual combat, gravity spell, to the territory to this terrifying ultimate move. Shinrei's murderous aura did not weaken at all. These people were all unpardonable people who were stained with blood. He didn't mind transforming into Shura to kill them all. Sekali's figure suddenly appeared behind Shinrei. A black flame appeared in his hand, and he punched. Shinrei was already prepared. He turned around suddenly and punched back. When the two fists containing huge power collided, the nearby fearless warriors were all sent flying by the terrifying air waves. The two figures in the center of the force field stood still. They were actually evenly matched. At the moment when the power cancelled out, Shinrei and Sekali moved at the same time. For a while, the sound of fighting was continuous. The fearless warriors could only hear the sound of attack and defense, and they could only see the occasional images of the two people. Even the demon emperor leader who was slightly injured could only see the two figures moving rapidly, but the specific movements could not be seen clearly. Shinrei's whole body surged with a huge wave-like surging force, and he launched an overlapping force. Sekali had already suffered from this kind of power before. He dodged the heavy force with a backward somersault. As soon as he landed, he saw a huge dazzling light ball whistling toward him. Sekali didn't evade, and he greeted it with both hands. When he made contact with, or aura shot, his body trembled suddenly. He couldn't help but take a step back, then 2 steps, 3 steps. Shinrei frowned. He could feel that the power of, or aura shot, was rapidly weakened under some mysterious power. Sekali had already taken 6 or 7 steps back. He shouted and exerted force with both hands to tear the weakened, or aura shot, apart. Very good power. It is almost equal to the intermediate stage of the demon overlord. Especially the spirit power, it is even stronger. You are really a big fish. I made a wrong judgment previously. Sekali exhaled, and the slightly cracked red armor on his body began to heal quickly and automatically at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the blink of an eye, it returned to its original state. You should be able to see that my true strength is only the early stage of the demon overlord. Unfortunately, you still can't beat me, and you will die in my hands. Shinrei did feel something strange. Sekali's comprehensive strength was S-. When Shinrei's power had not reached the peak stage of the Demon Emperor, he used the Royal Star Transformation to kill Nero of the early stage of the Demon Overlord. Now that his own power had reached the peak stage of the Demon Emperor, he should be able to compete with the intermediate stage of the Demon Overlord. But in the previous confrontation, he could only be evenly matched with Sekali. Because of the Wheel of Hera? Shinrei asked tentatively. Yes. My territory has been integrated with the Wheel of Hera. Sekali showed a strange smile. The armor on my body is also the armor of faith. Unless you can cut off the source of faith and kill all the people who believe in me in the White Feather Estate, otherwise, under the protection of the power of faith, my power and life will be endless. From the moment you stepped into this hall, which is the Wheel of Hera territory, you are doomed to be defeated. Even if you want to escape, you can't. Shinrei felt that what Sekali said was not an exaggeration. The Wheel of Hera territory was a bit similar to the super system. Generally speaking, Sekali was almost invincible here unless there was a decisive power that overwhelmed the entire territory. A demon overlord with the armor of faith is a good sacrifice. I believe the master will be very happy. Sekali's ghastly voice echoed in the hall. My fearless warriors, dedicate your life power. The bodies of all the fearless warriors in the Wheel of Hera territory quickly began to dry up and become lifeless corpses. Activate. Shackles of Sacrifice. Shinrei was wondering about the master in Sekali's words, but his body suddenly felt sluggish as if he was bound by countless chains. He couldn't break free. This kind of chain had a strange power. It was actually rapidly extracting Chunrui's soul power and vitality. Chunrui's body suddenly trembled. I have already set the shackles when I fought with you just now. Coupled with the sacrifice of the life of the fearless warriors, there is no way for you to break free with your strength. Tremble. Be afraid. Sikali laughed triumphantly. At this time, the armor on Chunrui's body began to change. It changed from a dazzling luster to a black that exuded a destructive aura. The shape also looked hideous and terrifying. You are wrong. This guy's trembling is not because of fear, but because he can't suppress my will. A gloomy laughter came. Very good. So much faith power. The price of burning a lot of will is not in vain. With these powers I can really... Before he finished speaking, Chunrui, who was bound by the shackles of sacrifice, suddenly disappeared. A huge dark red-black hole appeared in the Wheel of Hera territory. Sikali was horrified to find that not only could he not extract the enemy's power, but all the power, including the faith power, rushed uncontrollably toward the black hole. Chapter 528. In the Wheel of Hera territory, the terrifying black hole frantically devoured everything around it. Some guards or fearless warriors who entered the hall later were swallowed by the black hole, leaving nothing behind. Sikali used more than a dozen offensive or defensive means in a row, but he couldn't contain this terrifying devouring power. What the black hole devoured was not ordinary power, but the faith power that he had worked hard to accumulate for many years. The faith power made Sikali advance from the ordinary demon emperor level to the demon overlord level by leaps and bounds. Then, in less than 5 years, he had stabilized the early stage. Recently, he had even faintly broken through to the intermediate stage. It was not an exaggeration to say that he was a peerless genius to be able to reach this level in 5 years. With the special function of the Wheel of Hera and the gift of a certain master, it was only a matter of time before he reached the peak stage of the demon overlord, or he might even have the chance to become the legendary demigod. The reason why Sikali had been keeping a low profile and did not hesitate to confuse the capital with a fence-sitter attitude was to accumulate enough strength to soar into the sky and shock the demon realm in the future. Once a certain plan succeeded, both the Dark Moon and Obsidian would have to surrender to him, Sikali. Not only the fallen angel empire, but even the entire demon realm might be trampled by him. What Sikali didn't expect was that he encountered such an enemy today. The faith power that he had painstakingly accumulated actually became the opponent's food. The light in the hall flickered, and the upright pillars became bent under the terrifying devouring power of the black hole. The image was very strange, and the entire territory began to tremble constantly. Sikali's heart trembled even more. The Wheel of Hera was his greatest reliance, and it was also an important source of power for a big secret. Now that he was going to lose the Wheel of Hera, how could he not be terrified? The black hole seemed to devour everything. The power of the Wheel of Hera territory had become extremely thin. Sikali could do nothing about it. The only thing he could do was to try his best to protect himself from being devoured by the black hole for the time being. Boom! After the violent vibration, the huge space of the hall returned to its original state. The pillars and many facilities on the ground disappeared. The black hole finally shrank gradually, and the devouring power weakened rapidly. No! Sikali screamed heartbreakingly. His face was bleeding from all 7 orifices. His territory and part of his soul power had been integrated with the Wheel of Hera. Now that the Wheel of Hera was completely devoured, not only all the faith power disappeared, but his body and soul were also seriously injured. Compared with the trauma, there was more fear and regret in his heart. The hope of ascending to the peak of power, and the order of the mysterious master, were all gone. After the black hole disappeared, the terrifying enemy in black armor appeared in front of him. Sikali looked at the 2 strange eyes through the visor, and his soul almost had the illusion of annihilation. In the midst of panic, the black armor began to change again, returning to the original starlight color and shape. The destructive breath contained in the eyes had disappeared, and it turned into sword-like anger. Shinrei was very angry at the moment, mostly because of Shura. Every time he used the Royal Star transformation, Shura's willpower would be greatly enhanced, and it was difficult to suppress. Chin-chin. Of Chin-chin of Chin-chin Chin-chin-chin spirit. Chin-chin technique of Chin-king of Chin-chin series of technique. Was. Burning one's willpower was similar to burning one's life force. Even if one succeeded, one's vitality would be greatly damaged. As a result, Shura used this desperate method to temporarily dominate his body and swallowed the wheel of Hera containing the power of faith in one breath. Shinrei could sense that Shura, who had swallowed the wheel of Hera, suffered great damage to his consciousness. He seemed to have fallen into some kind of long sleep. It seemed that he would not come out to cause any trouble for a long time. However, he felt more and more uneasy in his heart. Shura is not a fool. The intention of spending such a big price to devour the wheel of Hera is definitely not simple. Shinrei suddenly remembered that when he was fighting with Nero at that time, Shura devoured all of Nero's flesh and power, but the demon overlord level power sucked from Nero was not used in the star conversion, or by his body, but he did not know where it went. The same was true for the demigod's soul power that he devoured previously. It was probably a huge hidden danger. These thoughts were just fleeting in Shinrei's mind, and he had no time to think deeply because there was still an important enemy to deal with in front of him. As soon as Shinrei's mind moved, countless translucent stars appeared around Sakali's body, and his power dropped sharply. Sakali previously saw that Shinrei had used this strange territory when dealing with the fearless warriors, but he did not expect it to have such a strong weakening effect. It was almost impossible for his severely injured body to gather the power to resist. Before he could react, Shinrei's attack had arrived. The surging overlapping power broke out like a huge wave. Sakali helplessly channeled dark flame on his arms to block. Due to the loss of the power of faith and the wheel of Hera territory, his power was greatly reduced. His entire body was blown away by this punch. There was a continuous burst sound on his body, and a lot of cracks appeared on the red armor. This time, there was no way to heal automatically as before. Sakali knew that he was definitely not the enemy's opponent in his current state. He gritted his teeth, and a red transparent crystal bead appeared in his palm. It instantly bloomed into a blood-red flower shape. That flower! Shinrei's pupils shrank. For him who had experienced the alchemy civilization inheritance trial, this flower was simply too familiar. He also had such a flower before that. Judging from the strange breath that the flower exuded, it turned out to be the flower of abyss. The scene of the final battle in the trial appeared in Shinrei's mind. The endless monster sea, mother's nest, fiery sorceress, abyss lord. He couldn't help but shudder. At this time, the strange red flower in Sakali's hand had split, and a red mist covered his body. His body began to twist and swell rapidly, and a beast-like roar came from his throat. In the blink of an eye, a half-human, half-beast monster appeared in front of him. This monster was about 2 meters tall with red eyes. Sakali's appearance could be vaguely seen. The arms with sharp bone spurs grew to a length close to the ground. A flame-like red light appeared in his pale black skin, and his whole body exuded a violent breath. The monster roared wildly and pounced toward Shinrei. His arms carried a terrifying flame. Shinrei did not panic. The surging overlapping energy changed. The wave-like force turned into a lake-like soft force, and he calmly greeted the monster. Sakali was confident that after using the Flower of Abyss mutation, his strength should have surpassed the opponent. Especially his attack power was extremely powerful. Even if the opponent's means were strange, he could win steadily. However, the opponent's defensive means were extremely mysterious. The violent attack seemed to have fallen into an endless quagmire. His strength could not be exerted, and he was restrained everywhere. He felt extremely aggrieved. Although the Flower of Abyss could activate a powerful force for Nanas clan, the side effects afterward were also very big. The body and soul would suffer injuries that were difficult to repair in a short time, and their strength would be greatly reduced. Sikali originally wanted to use the Flower of Abyss desperately to capture the enemy who swallowed the Wheel of Hera, and explain to his master, but he didn't expect to be more passive. How could he know that although the Abyss clan had disappeared for tens of thousands of years, the enemy in front of him had extremely rich combat experience with the Abyss clan? He also inherited the soul of the ancient civilization and was well aware of the weaknesses of the Abyss clan. The soft force used by Chunrei was an imitation of the exquisite means of borrowing and unloading force that Catherine used in the battle in the Crystal Valley. In terms of attack power, it was not comparable to the surging overlapping energy, but it was a good means to defend and restrain the enemy. Sikali's attack method and breath were very similar to that of the violent demon, so a similar mutation should have occurred. In the trial space, Chunrei had used this kind of soft force with overlapping energy to kill dozens of violent demons. Now, he was familiar and handy when using it against Sikali. Sikali became more and more anxious as he fought. He knew that unless he had overwhelming absolute power, his power would definitely not be able to break the opponent's skill. What was worse was that if this continued, the time limit of the Flower of Abyss would be up. By then, his power would be greatly reduced, and he could only be slaughtered. Thinking of this, Sikali felt timid in his heart, and he suddenly had the intention to retreat. When he was distracted, Chunrei's keen spirit power caught the flaw. After unloading the force, he changed from defense to offense. A aura blade cut straight into his shoulder. Even though the hardness of Sikali's arm had increased several times after the mutation, he couldn't withstand this blow when he was weak. Only a layer of skin was left hanging on his entire arm, and it was almost cut off at the root. He roared in pain, covered his arm without hesitation, and fled out of the hall with all his strength. Chunrei naturally would not let go of this culprit, and he chased after him. The speed of the two was very fast, and the guards along the way had no time to stop them. Sikali seemed to be in a panic. He did not escape to the exit of the cave outside, but he kept fleeing to the depths of the base. While chasing, Sikali felt that the effect of the Flower of Abyss was rapidly declining. He was even more horrified as he ran all the way. Chunrei chased Sikali into a huge cave. To his surprise, this cave turned out to be a dead end. The lights in the entire cave were dim. There was a platform in the center which seemed to be some kind of altar building. The entire cave was full of a strong bloody smell. Sikali fled desperately toward the altar, but his speed suddenly slowed down. His mutated body also returned to its original state. It turned out that the effect of the Flower of Abyss had completely faded. Sikali wanted to cry but had no tears. Before he could react, Chunrei's figure had appeared behind him in an instant, and a hand blade slashed heavily on his neck. Sikali's strength was greatly reduced. He fainted to the ground without even making a sound. The injury on his shoulder could not be suppressed, and blood spread quickly on the ground. Chunrei instinctively felt the strangeness of this cave. As he was about to grab Sikali and leave, the light in the cave gradually brightened, and the scene changed. There was surging and steaming blood all around like a terrifying blood river. Illusion? Chunrei quickly calmed his mind, but the blood river not only did not disappear, but it changed again. Chapter 529. The terrifying destructive breath surged. With Chunrei's current spirit power level, he had clearly felt the soul-trembling hatred contained in the breath. A terrifying image of a figure bathed in fire, and holding a great sword appeared in Chunrei's memory. He couldn't help but shudder. That is a terrifying existence that can kill a demon overlord in seconds. Although the trial of the ancient alchemy civilization is a dream created by the Territory Kingdom, it is a simulation of the real war between the alchemy civilization and the Abyss family. The power of the Abyss family in reality is stronger than in the illusion. As the powerhouse at the top of the pyramid of the Abyss, the terrifying figure holding the great sword definitely has the power to kill a demon overlord in seconds. What appeared in front of Chunrei now was also not an illusion. Strictly speaking, it was not a cave under the barren mountain, but a real abyss similar to the underground of the Crystal Valley. It was surrounded by blood-red lava with no exit. Shinrei's only way out now was the Stargate, just like when he escaped from the underground abyss of the Crystal Valley. However, the nearest star point of the Stargate was set in the White Feather City. Once he returned to the White Feather City, today's operation would be a complete failure. As long as Sikali was awake, he would definitely give up this base. It would be difficult to find him again next time. In this way, the entire White Feather Estate's plan would also be wasted. It would directly affect the survival of the Dark Moon. The destructive force in front was still far away previously, but it had closed the distance in an instant. Shinrei gritted his teeth and did not activate the Stargate. There was one more thing in his hand. It was a red badge engraved with a strange snake-shaped pattern. It was given by Satan when he was at Mountain Sacred. Shinrei knew that Satan's gift of the badge and the demigod's power was not really out of kindness, but for now, summoning Satan was the best solution. A figure had already appeared in front of him. It was about 200 meters away. Logically speaking, with Shinrei's eyesight, he should be able to see it clearly, but this figure seemed blurry. It was vaguely an image of a person with bone wings on his back and a great sword in his hand. The only clear feeling was the kind of hatred that could destroy the soul. It really was an abyssal lord. If it was a crevice demon, or a violent demon, it would be fine. Even if he encountered a fiery witch, he could still fight. However, the one in front of him could instantly kill a dozen demon overlord-level giant crystal beasts. Even if the Lord of the Abyss was not in the range of analytical eyes, just the hateful breath across space and distance could be guessed that analytical eyes' analysis was definitely, extremely dangerous. Shinrei's heart trembled, and he immediately concentrated his power on the snake's head of the badge in his hand. The center of the badge suddenly emitted a dark red light, and then with a light increase of force, the entire badge shattered. The figure surrounded by the aura of destruction did not approach again. It just looked at the intruder from afar. Even though it was far away, the invisible killing intent and oppression still caused Shinrei's heart to tremble. Facing such a terrifying enemy, it would be a lie to say that there was no fear in his heart, but only fear would make him die faster. Shinrei calmed his heart completely. His S+ level spirit power was fully unleashed, and all his spirit was concentrated on the figure that represented death. Suddenly, an extreme sense of danger surged in his heart. Then, in his highly concentrated mental power, he seemed to feel a terrifying giant sword swinging towards him. His vision suddenly became extremely distorted. He felt a terrifying sharp aura with a strong aura of death slashing towards his head. An exaggerated crack appeared on the incomparably sturdy ground, and the magma along the way splashed like a fountain under some kind of terrifying wind pressure. If this sword hit him, even if Shinrei had the regeneration and astral form ability, his limbs and soul would be completely annihilated under this terrifying sword aura. When Shinrei had a warning sign in his heart, a faint light that had been brewing for a long time suddenly bloomed in his hand. He blocked in front of him without hesitation. It turned out that this preemptive action saved his life. The sharp chi hit his hand faster than expected, and an unstoppable huge pressure suddenly came over. Shinrei felt an unprecedented crisis. His mental power was highly concentrated on his hands. The terrifying sharp chi that was enough to cut the mountain range was constantly resolved and transferred under the mysterious skill of star diversion. The nearby rock walls and ground also cracked and deformed under this terrifying power. The Lord of the Abyss only waved a sword, but not only was the power terrifying, but the strength of the aftershock was beyond imagination. It kept going on and on. Shinrei's nerves became tighter and tighter because the 10-second time limit of star diversion was coming to an end, and the power of this sword did not show any signs of weakening. The light in Shinrei's hand finally disappeared. The invincible sharp chi instantly cut his body in half without any hindrance. No, countless pieces. To be more precise, it was countless flying demonic flies. God-eating masks, demonic flies transformation technique. The demonic flies flew, avoided the terrifying sword chi range, and reassembled into Shinrei's body. At this time, the terrifying sword she gradually disappeared. This is just a casual sword from 100 meters away. Shinrei's expression became more and more solemn. The power of the Lord of the Abyss is far beyond imagination. Even the peak stage of the demon overlord powerhouses like Catherine Paglio and the Dark Elemental King did not give him such a terrifying pressure. Could it be that the power of the Lord of the Abyss has reached? This place is thousands of miles away from Mountain Sacred. Shinrei didn't know when and how Satan would arrive. Since he had made a decision, the only thing he could do now was to wait. Facing this terrifying Lord of the Abyss. Now that the two life-saving skills of demonic fly's transformation and star diversion had been used up, if there was another sword like this, Shinrei was not sure if he could still avoid or take it. Therefore, what he had to do was a bold thing, which was to take the initiative to attack. Countless stars appeared around Shinrei's body, and his physical qualities were suddenly strengthened. Within the effective time, the galaxy territory could be activated repeatedly. At the same time, the surrounding heat was suddenly replaced by a chill. The boiling magma due to the influence of the sword chi gradually calmed down. It actually turned into ice incredibly, and it quickly spread toward the Lord of the Abyss. The Lord of the Abyss, whose figure was still blurred, did not attack or defend. He just stared at the extending ice, seemingly thinking about something. With a whoosh, Shinrei's body was already burning with black flames, and it turned into a manic red in the blink of an eye. A huge scorching dragon bathed in fire roared out of the red light and pounced toward the Lord of the Abyss with astonishing power. The Lord of the Abyss still did not move. Just at the moment when the scorching dragon was about to approach his body, Shinrei's consciousness felt that the Lord of the Abyss took the initiative to move, then the great sword inserted into the ground disappeared for a moment and returned to its original place. The scorching dragon's surging momentum suddenly stopped. Time seemed to freeze. In the next blink of an eye, the huge scorching dragon's head suddenly cracked. The entire meandering body was neatly split by an irregular curve like a zipper being pulled open. The solid ice that was originally frozen by the realm of winter also began to crack and melt along with the split position, and it was replaced by blood-red boiling magma. Under the state of Royal Star Transformation, the strongest attack, Scorching Dragon Kill, launched with Galaxy Territory and Realm of Winter, was completely defeated without any suspense. After the terrifying aura destroyed the Scorching Dragon, it still pounced toward Shinrei with undiminished momentum. The power of this sword was far above the previous sword. Shinrei had fought fiercely with Sikali for a long time previously, and the Scorching Dragon Kill just now consumed a lot of power. The state of the Royal Star Transformation had begun to be in a critical state. Facing this terrifying second sword, Demonic Fly's Transformation and Star Diversion could not be used again. The situation was extremely critical. Fortunately, he still had a shield, the half of the elusive demon shield, one of the 7 artifacts of the demon realm. As Shinrei's mind moved, a dark golden shield with ancient patterns had appeared in his hand. At the same time, a translucent blue shield appeared around his body. As soon as the shield was cast, the rapid aura had completely defeated the Scorching Dragon. Then, it cut the shield without any pause and slashed the dark golden shield firmly. Clang! The shock caused by the contact between the invisible aura and the shield made the nearby magma ripple. Shinrei's body was dragged involuntarily as if it was being pulled by someone. Although the demon shield could absorb damage to replenish stamina, the pressure of this blow was too great. The star-like armor cracked for the first time. The fragments scattered in the air along the way and disappeared. Shinrei's body was pushed through countless magma by the huge force. Wherever he passed, the magma split like a wave under the pressure until he stopped in front of a rock wall. The armor on Shinrei's body had been shattered, and blood was constantly overflowing from his 7 orifices, covering the blood that had dried up under the high temperature. There was no mark on the demon shield, but his violently trembling hands could hardly hold the shield firmly. The power of one sword is actually so strong. If there is a third sword, the demon shield can block it, but Shinrei definitely can't block it. Do I really have to use Stargate? Seeing that the second sword was still blocked, the Abyss Lord seemed to be even more surprised. As he was about to launch the third sword, the space suddenly became distorted. A strange power fluctuation rippled in midair. Shinrei's heart moved. He retracted the state of Royal Star Transformation, and the demon shield also disappeared. At this time, the space in midair seemed to be torn apart by someone. An irregular hole appeared, and a somewhat familiar man's figure appeared in front of him. Race, unable to judge. Comprehensive strength assessment, unable to judge. Analysis, extremely dangerous. In fact, when the crack in the space first appeared, analytical eyes had already displayed the data. Then, Shinrei only saw the figure, indicating that the figure really appeared before he could see. He was a very young man with handsome facial features. He didn't have the terrifying aura of an abyssal lord. He seemed like an ordinary person. This, ordinary, seemed to be a part of heaven and earth. No matter where he was, he gave off a feeling that one had to look up to him. Mountain Sekard's demigod powerhouse, Satan. Satan did not look at Shinrei, and he locked on the Abyss Lord in the distance at first glance. It was as if the Abyss Lord's flaming blood-red eyes were staring at him. In Shinrei's perception, the Abyss Lord seemed to have moved. The great sword inserted in the ground pointed at Satan, then he could only see the sword tip trembling slightly, and countless cracks appeared in the surrounding space. It was clearly slashed hundreds of times with speed and power that the naked eye could not detect. Shinrei couldn't help but close his eyes because his vision could no longer keep up with the opponent's movements. He could only rely on his spirit power to barely capture a few traces of the trajectory. The two were clearly confronting each other in this scene, but they felt that the space close at hand was staggered and split into countless independent spaces. Although the Abyss Lord's sword was terrifying, Satan was even more terrifying. He stood in the void without moving. Shinrei did not know what method he used to make the Abyss Lord attack crazily at an extraordinary speed. Shinrei felt that the Abyss Lord's attack was more like a kind of defense, and Satan, who did not move, was attacking instead. The Abyss Lord's aura of hatred became more and more restrained. Finally, the aura burst out violently, and the entire space shook violently. Shinrei opened his eyes and found that the Abyss Lord had disappeared, but the blood-red magma within a radius of hundreds of meters had incredibly condensed into solid green crystals with many cracks. In the center was an exaggeratedly radial huge pit, which was also covered with green crystals. It seemed to be the trace of the Abyss Lord being killed. Satan raised his hands gently, and Shinrei felt dizzy. The surrounding scenery suddenly changed. It was full of green jungles which seemed to be a bit familiar. Mountain Sekard. Shinrei was shocked. Did Satan move Mountain Sekard here? No, it should be a kind of phantom, or should it be called a territory kingdom? The phantom of Mountain Sekard seemed to be constantly devouring the solidified Abyss Blood Sea, and the image of the Abyss Blood Sea gradually became thinner. Satan had already landed and glanced at Shinrei lightly. Simon. I'll just call you that. You surprised me. Greetings, Sir Satan. Shinrei saluted respectfully, looking flattered. Sir Satan is overpraising me. Thanks to your timely appearance and killing that terrifying monster, otherwise I would have been dead. Judging from the battle between the Abyss Lord and Satan, the previous two swords did not use its full strength at all. Since Satan could completely kill the Abyss Lord, his strength could be imagined. Although he knew that this demigod powerhouse had ulterior motives, Shinrei still did not dare to be negligent. If Satan wanted to kill him, he could just move his fingers. He did not even have time to escape into the Stargate. I didn't kill that enemy. It is just a projection. If this projection becomes the real body, even I can't destroy it so quickly. Satan's words made Shinrei secretly shocked. It's just a projection, and it has such terrifying power. Then, the real Abyss Lord should be able to compete with Demigod. Even if it's not comparable to Demigod, it's far better than Demon Overlord. Shinrei felt that he had some new understanding of the strength levels above the Demon Overlord, only to hear Satan continue to say, You surprised me with 3 things. First, your growth rate is beyond my imagination. You absorbed my essence so quickly, and your strength actually reached the peak stage of the Demon Emperor. Moreover, your spirit power seems to have undergone some kind of mutation. Second, you actually encountered the Abyss family again. If it is just luck, it is really amazing. Third, you can actually resist the 2 swords of the Abyss Lord, which is difficult even for the peak stage of the Demon Overlord. Satan smiled slightly. I won't force you to explain, but this Abyss projection land is quite delicious prey for my territory kingdom. Tell me, what do you want? I can satisfy one of your conditions. Conditions? Chunrei's mind suddenly became active. Chapter 530. Although his spirit power had reached the S+ level, which could effectively extend the effectiveness of the Royal Star transformation, he still couldn't avoid the fatigue period after the end. Chunrei was extremely tired mentally and physically at this time. What he wanted to do most was to sleep, but he couldn't sleep yet. It was not only because of Sikali outside the Abyss world, but also because of Satan's promise. A demigod's promise. Satan was extremely shrewd. He had always harbored ill intentions towards the uninvited guest who broke into Mountain Sacred, but no matter what, the power held by the demigod powerhouse was absolutely powerful. It was enough to affect the outcome of a war or even an empire. Then, Chunrei took a deep breath and forcibly used his spirit power to suppress his tiredness. I'd better explain to Sir first. The reason why I absorbed the power bestowed by Sir so quickly was just a coincidence. It was related to something called the Wheel of Hera. He briefly mentioned that Sikali used the Wheel of Hera to defraud the Faith Power and the Bloody Altar, but he attributed the growth of his power to the accidental devouring of the Wheel of Hera's power. As for avoiding the 2 attacks of the Abyss Lord, it was also related to the Faith Power devoured in his body. Unfortunately, in order to defend the 2 swords, he exhausted the absorbed power, and he was seriously injured. If Satan didn't arrive in time, he would have been killed. These words were half true and half false. Satan listened calmly and did not express any opinions. When he finished speaking, he said, "It's actually the Wheel of Hera. It turns out that the Abyss family has tried their best to find such a servant. They want to use the stolen faith power to weaken the seal of the channel step by step. At the very least, they can gradually project their true body over. Unfortunately, they made you a lucky guy." Satan only talked about the Abyss family and the Wheel of Hera, but he didn't mention the truth or falsehood of Chunrei's explanation just now. Chunrei smiled bitterly. "This is considered lucky? I almost died. By the way, sir, what exactly is the Abyss family?" "They are real demons." Satan gave Chunrei a profound look. "Once they return, everything will be annihilated, including the world on the ground." "Real demons? Destroy everything?" Judging from the memories in the inheritance, the alchemy civilization was indeed destroyed by the Abyss race. This should not be an exaggeration. Chunrei noticed that Satan used the word return and frowned slightly. "However, it's almost impossible to open the channel seal at this stage. Generally speaking, the Abyss race will desperately release some kind of projection through the seal to lure some suitable people to become enslaved servants. The Abyss in front of you is a projection space that the Abyssal race painstakingly created. It has existed for at least 10,000 years. Satan didn't continue to explain. Chunrei felt something appear in his hand. It was the snake emblem that summoned Satan. "Your luck is beyond my expectations. I hope that the next summoning will bring more surprises. Alright, now tell me your wish." Chunrei inexplicably thought of a story about trading souls with demons, especially the one in front of him who had the name of a demon. He hesitated and said, "Lord Satan, if I want to ask you to take action and change the situation of a war. If the demigod powerhouse takes action, there is no suspense in killing Obsidian or helping the Dark Moon defeat the capital army." Satan did not answer. He just looked at him faintly and asked, "Do you think I will take action?" Satan once said that he would not care about any affairs of the Demon Realm Empire, even the rise and fall of its existence. Shinrei originally asked with a probing mentality. When he saw the other party's attitude, although it was expected, he was inevitably a little disappointed. What conditions should I put forward? Send a trace of the essence power with sinister intentions? Bah! I feel disgusted just by hearing this name. Shinrei was extremely exhausted physically and mentally. His brain was gradually heavy, and he was about to fall asleep. He didn't have the energy to think carefully. Can this condition be fulfilled later? No. Satan's eyes showed a hint of coldness. I don't like to owe favors. You must say it now. The meaning was obvious. You must say a condition today, otherwise you will make me unhappy. At this time, the abyss space had been swallowed up by the phantasm of Mountain Sacred. Shinrei returned to the bloody altar cave. Sikali, who had almost lost his arm, was still lying unconscious on the ground. Then, sir, please take me and this captive to the top of the White Mountain in the southernmost part of town Massimo. After Shinrei said this, his consciousness began to blur. Then, he only felt the earth shaking and the space changing. In a few blinks of an eye, he was on the White Mountain. Sikali was in a coma, and Satan was nowhere to be seen. After controlling Sikali with Rala's special shackles, Shinrei used his last strength to send out some kind of gathering signal, then he fell to the ground and fell asleep. Dark Moon Estate, Town Daiko. The news of today's victory was spread everywhere in the barracks. General Gerent personally led the army to defeat the 300,000 undead army in the wilderness. General Gerent is great. I've finally vented my anger. In the next battle, we must completely defeat the main force of the Dark Moon. The Capital Coalition Army's command tent. Hearing the cheers of the soldiers outside, the gloom on Obsidian's face finally dissipated a lot. The generals and lords also smiled. Obsidian said with appreciation, Gerent, you have won a much-needed victory for us. It is a veritable top merit. Hearing this distrustful tone, the eyes around that were full of jealousy became even more hostile. Even Josh became the target of jealousy. Obsidian saw the dissatisfaction of the lords and generals and he nodded. Gerent and Josh stay. The rest of you go to rest first. After everyone else retreated, Josh smiled bitterly at Gerent. General, this is great. I'm benefiting from you. Gerent smiled slightly. I'm sorry, Sir Josh. Obsidian said. You can say it, Gerent. What is the battle plan? Your Highness, from Nesta's raid on the Moonlight Fortress to the ambush in Town Daiko, we have been in a passive state as if we are led by the nose. Gerent said solemnly. I suspect that there is a Dark Moon spy at the top of the coalition army. Josh's heart skipped a beat, but he was also a cunning person. He suddenly thought that if Gerent found out that he was a spy, he would design to test and expose him instead of doing it on such an occasion and in such a tone. Yes. There must be a problem. Josh gritted his teeth. Otherwise, how can Kanita die unjustly in the hands of his own people? Josh's eldest son, Joseph, was killed by the Dark Moon. Later, when he attacked the Dark Moon, he suffered heavy losses and returned in defeat. Even his heir, Kanita, died under the Dark Moon's trick. He was the biggest victim. The righteous indignation shown under this quick wit did not arouse the suspicion of Gerent and Josh. Because of this, I need to report this plan to the Royal Highness Regent alone to avoid leakage. Gerent said, Your Highness, my idea is to ambush the west of the Dark Moon from the Red Spirit Estate through Town Leia of the Shadow Empire, and directly into the Dark Moon City. Obsidian's eyes lit up, and Josh's eyes also flashed with a strange expression. At present, the main force of the Dark Moon has been concentrated on the front battlefield to confront us. The Moon Shadow Legion, which was originally defending the west, must have sent out all their elites, so their defense is weak. Our military strength is better than the Dark Moon, so we can completely separate an ambush force to ambush the Wallen Fortress from the west of the Red Spirit Estate through Town Leia and break through the Dark Moon City's rear in one fell swoop. Obsidian thought carefully for a while and said, We have an agreement with the Shadow Empire. It is not easy for this ambush force to pass through Town Leia, and it is impossible to determine the true military strength of the Wallen fortress. Josh said, since the last Red Devils incident, in order to repair the relationship with Town Leia, I have given generous gifts to the mayor, Remont, many times. We can be considered as having some friendship. This time, I can bribe heavily again and split this ambush force into parts. They should be able to pass through Town Leia, but the number of people cannot be too large. Jarrett nodded. Josh was the Red Spirit Lord. He was extremely familiar with the environment and character relationships of the estate. The ambush plan was definitely inseparable from the suggestion of this local tyrant. This was the real reason why Jarrett asked Josh to stay. We can advance in both directions. There is no extra barrier on the west side of the Dark Moon after the Wallen fortress. If Jia's forces are concentrated on the front, then as long as the ambush force on the west side breaks through the Wallen fortress, we can take down the Dark Moon city from the back in one fell swoop. In case the main elite of the Moon Shadow Legion has not been transferred, then as long as this force is delayed, how can the two legions and the undead army, even with the pitiful force of the Blue Lava Estate, resist our frontal attack? Obsidian was overjoyed. Yes. This plan is absolutely feasible. Who do you think is the most suitable commander of this ambush force? Jarrett looked at Josh, who was a little eager, and said, this team is likely to be the key to defeating the Dark Moon. I want to lead the elites of the headquarters. Please allow it, Your Highness. Obsidian pondered for a moment and nodded. Okay. Josh rolled his eyes and said, in order to cooperate with the General's plan just now, our frontal attack has to be slowed down a little. However, General Jarrett is the deputy commander of the coalition army. If he disappears out of thin air, I'm afraid it will arouse the suspicion of some spies, and the Dark Moon will be on guard. What's your solution? There is one way, but General Jarrett will have to suffer. Josh smiled confidently. At the same time, we can also take this opportunity to uncover the Dark Moon spies. Josh, I will leave the matter of interrogating the spies to you. I will give you the greatest authority. Yes. Your Highness, I will definitely live up to the trust and eliminate all the spies that the Dark Moon has placed in the coalition army. Josh's resolute attitude made Obsidian very satisfied. He didn't know that this was simply a textbook case of a thief calling a thief. In the next few days, the coalition army was talking about a shocking news. The coalition army's deputy commander, Jarrett's proposal to stop the war and compromise with the Dark Moon angered the Royal Highness Regent, so he was removed from the position of deputy commander again. Immediately afterward, those lords who were originally jealous took the opportunity to add insult to injury. Under the connivance of some people, they exposed Jarrett's misdeeds of embezzling military supplies, falsely claiming credit, and even colluding with the enemy generals. The angry Obsidian imprisoned Jarrett and sent someone to escort him to the Red Spirit estate. He appointed the Red Spirit Lord Josh as the inspector to strictly investigate Jarrett's accomplices in colluding with the enemy. At the same time, he ordered the coalition army to prepare for a decisive battle with the Dark Moon at any time. A few insiders understood that Jarrett took this opportunity to return to the Red Spirit estate with the elites of the headquarters to prepare for the surprise attack plan on the West Road. The curtain of the decisive battle gradually opened. Chapter 531. In the haze, Chenrei's eyes finally opened. The first thing he saw was a clean and tidy room. The most attractive thing was the beautiful woman sitting by the bed. She had light blue skin, golden eyes, and a sexy body. Her face was covered by a veil, and she exuded a mysterious charm. Master, you are awake! Chenrei rubbed his sleepy eyes. Jensha, where is the captive? It's in the cellar. Baina and Belan are guarding it. How long did I sleep? Master, you slept for 2 whole days. Chenrei stretched comfortably and sat up. He found that he was naked. The clothes that were torn during the battle had been taken off, so he quickly got back into the quilt. Master, do you need Jensha to serve? A charming smile appeared behind Jensha's veil as she asked very naturally. In the lamp spirit's consciousness, It was a matter of course to serve the master with the body. A ridiculous scene in the illusion appeared in Chenrei's mind, and a certain part of his body suddenly reacted naturally. He hurriedly shook his head and said, "No need." This time, he did not come to town Massimo alone. He also brought the lamp spirits, and the dark demon's people. After receiving the signal, the lamp spirits quickly found the sleeping Chenrei and transferred him and the captive to a temporary residence in the new town. Chenrei got dressed and just ate something when he saw the dark demon's leader, Bennett, hurriedly walk in. "Sir is awake? I happen to have one thing to ask Sir to decide. Since yesterday, many strangers have appeared in the town, inquiring about the explosion of the Big Barren Mountain 2 days ago. According to the investigation, the leader was an unfamiliar man with a woman. This woman seemed to be Lord Sakali's sister, Palando in disguise. We have just arrived in this town, so it is likely that we have been targeted by the other party. Should we move now?" The so-called Big Barren Mountain explosion was actually Satan destroying the underground base. Sakali's peak stage demon emperor clone once said that once the wheel of Hera was destroyed, although the real body and clone would not die, they would be severely injured at the same time. Therefore, Sakali's 2 clones must have already known about the destruction of the wheel of Hera, and they also guessed that a huge change had occurred in the base. Then the strange man who brought Palando to town Massimo is likely to be the clone who likes to play SM. Chenrei pondered for a moment, and came up with an idea. He gave Bennett a few instructions. Soon after, a group of people appeared in the hall of the house. Chenrei sat on a chair, looking very dispirited. There were still scars on his face and hands. Beside him were a few tall women wearing cloaks. "My lord, please take a seat." The strange man was indeed Sakali's clone of the early stage of the Demon Emperor. He was originally inquiring about the relevant news, but he accidentally met the contacts sent by Bennett, so he came all the way here. "Sir Faco!" Sakali's face returned to its original appearance. His face was a little pale. "I'm looking for you. I'm ashamed that I only completed half of your commission." Chenrei's voice sounded weak. "The wheel of Hull exploded by itself." Sakali was slightly shocked, but his eyes lit up. "Half completed? What about that person?" "The person has been succeeded, but—" Chenrei smiled bitterly and pointed to the scar on his face. "You also saw that the difficulty this time is much greater than I thought. It will take at least half a year to recover." Hearing that he had succeeded, Sakali's worried heart was finally relieved. A look of ecstasy flashed in his eyes. "Where is he?" "Don't worry, Sir Lord." Chenrei shook his head. "Should we talk about some matters related to cooperation first?" "No problem. Although Sir Faco did not complete the commission perfectly, it can be regarded as solving a big problem." Sakali took a deep breath and suppressed his excitement, but the kind of relief could not be hidden from Chenrei's spirit power. Originally, this clone was about to be devoured by the real body. When he was desperate, he met Chenrei. He was completely holding a desperate attitude. Unexpectedly, he could miraculously turn the tables. How could he not be ecstatic? As Chenrei was about to speak, the woman standing behind Sakali said, "Wait a minute! Not to mention that you have only completed half of the commission, at least you have to prove that you have caught someone. Otherwise, what qualifications do you have to talk about conditions?" Chenrei frowned, and Sakali quickly explained. "This is my sister, Palando. She is young and ignorant. Please don't be offended if she is rude. It turns out to be Ms. Palando." "What the lady said makes sense then." Chenrei winked at the lamp spirits on the side. The lamp spirits understood, and walked down. Soon, Sakali's real body appeared in the hall. He looked miserable, and his hands and feet were shackled by magic shackles. He was unconscious. The mind of Sakali's clone was agitated again. There was a special soul connection between him and the real body. He could conclude that the unconscious person in front of him was the real Sakali. Palando was also a little excited. Her purple eyes shone with a strange brilliance. "Sir Lord, it is this person, right?" Chenrei smiled and said, "I don't care what this person's identity is, and I don't care what special transformation ability he has. I only know that my collaborator is you, Sir Lord. This is enough to show my sincerity, right? Sakali's clone understood that the other party must have noticed something inside. Although the destruction of the Wheel of Hera was a pity, as long as he devoured the soul power of this real body, it was equivalent to getting rid of the fate of the clone and becoming the real Sakali. At that time, he could use the power of Fako to destroy another clone once and for all. Please forgive me. For the sake of insurance, I think it's better to check it. Palando stepped forward. The lamp spirits got Chunrei's signal and did not stop her. Palando carefully observed the real body, touched it with her hand, and even pulled out her hair and lit it with a fire to sniff it. After a long time, she finally nodded. Sakali's clone disapproved of this, but he knew that he couldn't be too impatient. Palando's pretense was actually a reminder which served as a buffer. He immediately calmed down and said, Sir Fako, it seems that our cooperation has made a good start. Since you have helped me solve the problem, I will not be stingy with the price I should pay. Tell me, what do you want? Sir Sakali is really a straightforward person. Chunrei nodded and said, My condition is to sign a contract with Sir Lord so that Sir can help the force behind me to complete an important matter. This matter requires the power of the entire White Feather estate. Sakali's clone had long determined that Chunrei was Bloodfall's man. He only knew that it was an equality contract. The so-called important matter that requires the power of the entire estate must be related to Bloodfall's ambition, but it was inconvenient to explain in front of Palando and the guards. He immediately nodded. This is easy to discuss. We can talk about the specific content alone. Seeing that he was so sensible, Chunrei saved a lot of effort. As he was about to speak, he heard Palando said sternly, Really? You guys better discuss it now and let me listen too. Sakali's clone was taken aback. Seeing Palando's strange look, his heart moved. He shouted to the guards, Miss is a little tired, take her to rest first. Several guards responded, but they did not touch Palando. Instead, they pounced on Sakali's clone, and a few went straight to the unconscious real body. Sakali's clone had never relaxed his guard against Chunrei, but he did not expect the problem to be on his side. As the clone was about to stop it, there was a sudden pain in his back. A bloody sharp blade protruded from his abdomen. He turned around in disbelief, then he saw Palando jumping back quickly with a blood-stained blue dagger in her hand. On the other side, Chunrei and the lamp spirits seemed to be in a strange state. They could only watch the real body being taken away by the guards. Sakali's clone staggered a few steps, covered his bleeding abdomen, and shouted angrily, Why are you doing this? Why not? Palando's pretty face was full of disdain. Why do you think I told you so many secrets? Is it because I'm really conquered by you? Wherever he went, there were corpses annihilated by the black flames. In the blink of an eye, the fearless warriors in the room had been slaughtered. The early stage of the Demon Emperor clone's poison had already taken effect. He staggered and almost couldn't stand steadily. He watched another clone slowly walking over with a pleading look in his eyes. The peak stage of the Demon Emperor clone glanced at him, but he did not stop and walked toward Chunrei. Just when the early stage of the Demon Emperor clone looked a little relieved, he suddenly turned around, and the entire room shook violently. The early stage of the Demon Emperor clone stared blankly at the big hole in his chest. With a bang, he fell to the ground without any signs of life. Behind him were the collapsed walls and a large area of ruins destroyed by the powerful shock wave. Useless people have no value of existence, don't they? Sir Fako? The peak stage of the Demon Emperor clone showed a firm smile to Chunrei as if he was an old friend. It is necessary to explain here. I followed these people and used a legendary grade item to hide my breath. Even if Sir is not injured, it is difficult to detect. I observed for a long time. I only dared to appear when I was sure that Sir had lost his combat power. It's really hard for Sir to deal with the real body this time. I didn't expect the final winner to be you. Chunrei shook his head with great emotion and asked, So, in the eyes of Sir Lord, do I still have value? That depends on Sir's performance. The peak stage of the Demon Emperor clone smiled and said, I am still very optimistic about the prospects of our cooperation, but the relationship may have to change. If Sir agrees, I hope to sign a contract that is more suitable for our current situation. Current situation? Shinrui looked at the scars caused by the fearless warriors on his body, and then looked at the few lamp spirits that were on the verge of collapse. He was silent. There was a faint murderous intention in the eyes of this clone. In the current situation, Sir seems to have no extra choice. I don't want to see regrettable things happen, but I don't allow any threat to exist. Choice. Shinrei sighed and shook his head, then he suddenly disappeared. The peak stage of the Demon Emperor clone was shocked. He raised his head as he sensed something, and he saw that there seemed to be starlight shining outside the huge hole on the roof. A bad feeling suddenly surged in his heart. He hurriedly came to Sakali's Rio body. As he was about to escape with the Rio body, he felt that his speed suddenly slowed down. He saw a golden-eyed woman among the cloaked maids beside Fako, waving at him repeatedly. As the light flashed, various negative feelings such as sluggishness, weakness, and chaos surged up at the same time. This woman's release and switching magic was extremely fast, and the effect was very strong. Even the demon overlord-level magician might not be comparable. Before waiting for the clone of the peak stage of the Demon Emperor to respond, the starlight in the room shone brightly. In the countless star images, a bright figure appeared on the side. A palm knife with terrifying sharp chi was placed on his neck like lightning. Judging from the overwhelming breath, as long as he swiped it lightly, his head would fall off. At this moment, this clone had understood a lot of things. It turns out that this Fako is the most patient. He has been faking injuries. In order to lure me out, he even deliberately let the weak, fearless warriors injure him. In other words, from the beginning, his whereabouts had been detected by the other party. It's still the question of choice. The voice of Fako sounded. There is only one real lord of the White Feather Estate. Is it you? Or him? The peak stage of the Demon Emperor clone sighed dejectedly. Do I still have a choice? Chapter 532. A few days later, a large number of merchants and some large caravans appeared in the Shadow Empire's town Leia. Although there was a war in the north of the Dark Moon Estate, the west and the Dark Moon City were still safe for the time being. The business system was basically normal. However, the number of merchants had been greatly reduced due to the war. A large-scale caravan like the one in front of them was rare, especially one that came from the Red Spirit Estate. It was worth pondering. The mayor of town Leia, Remont, just turned a blind eye to this. The fallen angel empire was now in a period of civil war, and Her Majesty Empress, who had been rumored to secretly support the Dark Moon, had an unclear attitude. There were no relevant strict orders. Moreover, he had recently accepted a heavy bribe from the Red Spirit Estate. As the saying goes, one's mouth is soft after eating the bribe, so he simply pretended to be confused. Gerent was mixed in one of the caravans. There were more than 2,000 people in the scattered team that entered town Leia, but it was still not enough. He could only stay in the hotel in the town for the time being and continue to wait. Josh told Gerent that the upper limit of the number of people was 5,000. If there were too many, they might not be able to pass through town Leia. The 5,000 people selected by Gerent were all elites from the headquarters brought out of Tequila Fortress. They were well equipped and had powerful combat power. The quality of the soldiers was more important than the quantity. Gerent had enough confidence to complete this raid and catch Princess Royal Jia off guard. In fact, Gerent left the front line, town Daiko, and moved to the west. He also had the intention of temporarily avoiding the limelight. Josh was right. The Royal Highness Regent knew how to use people, but he had no tolerance. Gerent thought that he shouldn't be eager to win and speak bluntly, which violated the Regent's taboo. Although he won a small victory later, the Regent's Duke's promise, alluding to the Dark Moon Estate's lord, actually pushed him, the deputy commander, to the forefront of the struggle, causing him to be envied and excluded by most lords and generals. If he finally commanded the army to defeat the Dark Moon, it would probably cause more suspicion. Even if he could really get the title of Duke, it would be impossible to become the Lord of the Dark Moon. Taking a step back, if the battle command failed, he would undoubtedly become a scapegoat, and the consequences would be even more unimaginable. Jarrett thought of himself as a pure soldier. In his heart, he would rather face the Dark Moon army than stay with those own people who were scheming against each other. At the very least, he knew who the enemy was on the battlefield. They had arrived at the inn in front. Jarrett didn't think about anything else. He immediately arranged for the disguised soldiers to stay and sent someone to pick up the companions who arrived one after another. The main force of the Moon Shadow Legion on the west side of the Dark Moon is very likely to have left the Wallen Fortress, but the defense will definitely be tighter. Therefore, we must gather our forces and succeed in one fell swoop. Even if a large number of troops were consumed and were not enough to advance east to the Dark Moon City, it could still cause tremendous pressure to the Dark Moon. It would greatly affect the morale of the Dark Moon's main force currently gathered in Town Leith. Therefore, the goal of this battle was to take down the Wallen Fortress at all costs. In Town Daiko, Inspector Josh, who was appointed by Obsidian, also had a clear goal: to eradicate the traitor. The Capital Coalition army was currently sharpening their swords to prepare for the eve of the war. Josh, who was holding a certain kind of sword handle, slashed at his own people for the first time. Several people at the top of the coalition army had been defeated, including General Satron, who had a close relationship with the rebel, Jarrett, and the three lords who secretly had dealings with the Dark Moon. The furious Regent Obsidian imprisoned all these people without any explanation. For a while, everyone was in danger. After eliminating the traitor, Obsidian immediately used speeches and material distribution to appease the morale of the army. He blamed all the responsibility for the previous defeat on these collaborators. For a while, the soldiers who didn't know the truth became excited. After the small defeat of the Undead Army, the Dark Moon Army in Town Leith was also urgently assembling and dispatching. Princess Royal Jia had arrived at Town Leith in person, and the head-on decisive battle between the two sides was imminent. Compared with Jarrett and Josh, Chinray seemed aimless at this time. He was wandering leisurely on the streets of the capital, visiting shops, shopping at stalls, and flirting with the succubus at the entrance of the tavern. He was so carefree. The matter of the White Feather Estate had been resolved. Sakali's clone of the peak stage of the Demon Emperor had become Chinray's servant. After devouring the soul of the real body, his strength had greatly increased. He was promoted from the peak stage of the Demon Emperor to the early stage of the Demon Overlord. He had become the real and only White Feather Estate Lord Sakali. This Sakali was scheming, ambitious, and resourceful. He was even better than the Red Spirit Lord Josh. However, in his opinion, Chinray went deep into the underground base, destroyed the Wheel of Hera under the protection of many powerful fearless warriors, captured the Demon Overlord's real body, completely destroyed the base, and set a trap to lure the two clones and Palando. Finally, he was captured in one fell swoop. Regardless of strength or scheming, he was far inferior. The rule of the demon realm was that the powerhouse was respected, so Sakali, who chose to surrender, was not completely unwilling in his heart. Coupled with the restrictions of the master-servant contract, at least at this stage, he did not dare to have extra thoughts. Chinray understood this very well. In order to truly subdue and control characters including Josh and Garadim, it was not enough to rely on the master-servant contract alone. He also needed strength and wisdom. As long as his strength became stronger and stronger, these people could only obediently bow down to him even if they were unruly. After signing the master-servant contract, Chinray's first order to the new servant was to immediately withdraw all the troops from the 3 northern towns of Ista and transfer these elite troops to the south. The assembly point was Town Kadano in the south, which was closest to the capital. At the same time, he would fully support all the logistical materials needed by the Warlock Fortress and select the best craftsmen to manufacture ordnance according to a certain blueprint to provide it to the Warlock Fortress. Sakali finally realized, it turns out that I have been wrong all along. Behind Fako is not Bloodfall, but the Dark Moon. What a dark moon! What a big game of chess! Chunrui's stroll in the capital seemed leisurely, but in fact, he had a panoramic view of the capital's defense. He compared it with the intelligence provided by the Dark Demon, and he was constantly adjusting and revising a plan that was about to be launched in his heart. Just as Jaren wanted to ambush the Dark Moon city from the west, Chunrui's plan was to ambush Obsidian's lair, the capital, from behind. When Chunrui came out of the Dark Moon, he did not have a single soldier on hand, but now, he already had the entire White Feather Estate army plus the elite legions sent by General George. He was only waiting for an order to attack the capital from Town Kadano at the fastest speed. Although most of the capital's main force was transferred to the Dark Moon's battlefield, the second general, Doran Russ and his Red Devil Legion could not be underestimated. There were still the power of the elder families and major families in the capital, plus the solid city walls and defenses. If they attacked forcefully, even if they took it down, the loss of troops and time would be quite huge. The best way to deal with a solid fortress was to break it from the inside. At present, the Dark Demon in the capital was all ready. The enemy was in the light, while he was in the dark. It was the greatest advantage to destroy from the inside. However, on the eve of the launch, Chunrui had a very important goal. At night. Inner City, Palace Secret Vault. Sir Temo. The guard in front of the secret vault bowed his head to a great demon with a cold expression. The great demon nodded without speaking and walked straight in. The guards did not have the slightest doubt because everyone knew the temperament of Sir Temo. However, what they didn't know was that after the Sir Commander walked into the door with a cold face, although his facial expression was stiff, his eyes began to turn flexibly. He quickly observed the surrounding environment and compared it with the information obtained in his mind. Temo was naturally Chunrui. It was not the first time that Chunrui came to the palace secret vault of the fallen Angel Empire. Obsidian once took him all the way without any hindrance, but today he was going to sneak into the secret vault alone. The secret vault of the palace was full of traps, and the security was extremely strict. It was almost impossible to sneak in by camouflage such as transformation. However, Chunrui had been planning this moment for a long time. As early as the first time he entered the secret vault, he started a certain plan. In the following time, the Dark Moon's secret agents had been making relevant preparations. Especially after Isabella took over the Dark Demon, the secret vault became a main research target. Finally, the focus of the breakthrough was set on this Sir Commander. By scheming, Chunrui successfully replaced Commander Temo and entered the secret vault smoothly. What appeared in front of Chunrui was a passage which was equivalent to a pass. Behind the pass was the most secret inner vault, which was a top-secret existence. Even Temo, the highest commander of the guards, did not have the authority to pass this pass. Similarly, the Dark Demon had very little information about the inner vault. They only knew that there might be more powerful guards or traps. Since Chunrui came here, he was naturally mentally prepared. After carefully sensing the situation of the passage for a while, Temo walked in decisively. The inner vault was empty without guards, but the magic circles all over were several times more complicated and powerful than the outside. However, it was a relatively easy thing for Chunrui. Chunrui was already a great expert in magic circles. Coupled with the memory knowledge obtained from the inheritance of the alchemy civilization, with the help of the deep analysis skill, his attainments in some aspects had reached an incredible level. He didn't even need to crack some magic circles. Instead, he used a special method to shield it. He could quickly pass through without disturbing the protection. This was the method he used to sneak into the underground base of Town Massimo last time. Chunrui fumbled all the way according to his memory and finally came to the front of a secret vault. Yes, it should be this red secret vault. After patiently unlocking the magic circle on the secret vault's door, he successfully pushed the door open. There were no magic gears or extra treasures inside the door. There was only a stone platform with a sword floating on it. The tail of the fine and delicate sword hilt was inlaid with a magnificent amethyst. The blade was two dark golden angels back to back. The body of the sword was snow white, engraved with two strange marks, exuding a simple and mysterious breath. One of the 7 artifacts of the demon realm, the supreme artifact of the Lucifer royal family sword of fallen angel. It was also the goal of Chenrui's sneak into the secret vault this time. Chenrui observed carefully for a while. As he was about to step forward, a glimmer of light flashed in his eyes. He changed his mind, took a deep breath, and said faintly, "It's a pity for a good sword. Isn't it?" His voice seemed to be asking someone, "What's a pity?" Finally, an old voice sounded in the room. The voice seemed to echo everywhere, but the specific source was unknown. "The most terrible thing about a good sword is that it can't meet its true master." Chenrui slowly turned his head back. This process was like a sheathed sword. He always maintained the greatest degree of calmness. "The same is true for an empire, isn't it?" The same 2 questions made the space behind him twist, and 2 transparent phantoms gradually became clear. Race, Great Demon, mutated. Comprehensive Strength Assessment, S+. Analysis, Fire Attribute. Very dangerous, Race, Pride Royal Family. Comprehensive Strength Assessment, S+. Analysis, Dark Attribute. Very dangerous. Chenrui's face remained calm, but his heart was tumbling violently. The peak stage of the demon overlord, and there are 2 of them. Damn it, today is an auspicious day. I'm so lucky. No wonder I haven't encountered any guards along the way since I entered the inner vault. It turns out that there are actually such powerhouses guarding. It is very likely that I have been targeted by the other party from the first step when I incarnated as Temo and entered the inner vault. The foundation of an empire was quite strong. Even if the fallen angel empire was the last of the 3 empires, it was by no means a fluke that it had been able to stand until now from the 7 royal families. On the surface, there were not many high-level powerhouses in each empire. The 3 generals were basically demon emperor level. Although the empire's generals focused on the commanding ability rather than individual combat power, what was really frightening in the big empire were those powerhouses that were not put on the table, such as the elders in the elder families, the hidden powerhouses in the royal families, and so on. For example, the 2 peak stage of the demon overlord in front of him. It was precisely because of the existence of these forces that even an ambitious and huge organization like the Bloodfall, which had several powerful demon overlords, could only operate in the dark and could not deal with them head-on. When Chenrui was first reborn in the demon realm, an intermediate demon could easily crush him. Later, his horizons gradually broadened. Higher demon, Demon King, Great Demon King, although it was difficult to even see the Demon Emperor powerhouse due to the decline of the Dark Moon estate for 400 years at that time. As Chenrui's strength and experience grew, not only did he come into contact with more and more demon emperors and demon overlords while moving between the 3 empires, he even interacted with the legendary demigod. The demon emperor that he could only look up to at the beginning had now become a stepping stone for Chenrui. Even if it was a powerhouse at the early stage and intermediate stage of the demon overlord, Chenrui had the confidence to fight, or even defeat him with the power of the Royal Star Transformation, and various means, but he still couldn't match the peak stage of the demon overlord. This peak stage of the demon overlord referred to the ordinary category. If he faced the superpower of Raisin, Catherine, and Rala, excluding the skills of demonic fly's transformation and star diversion, he would basically be killed in seconds. Chenrui couldn't even beat one of the 2 peak stage of the demon overlord guardians in front of him. With the addition of one, there was no suspense in the outcome. Even if he had an escape skill like Stargate, he might not be able to escape. When he came to steal the sword of Fallen Angel this time, he was mentally prepared to fight a tough battle, but he didn't expect the difficulty to be beyond imagination.